Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to the special recodification meeting of February 8th. And this meeting is being recorded. And at this point, I'd just like to take a roll call. Ms. Creighton?
Here.
Ms. Delicio?
Here.
Ms. Foley?
Here.
Mr. Gilbert?
Present.
Mr. Olney?
Here.
And Ms. Tenney?
Here.
We have a full board tonight. And at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our Vice Chair, Sarah Creighton, for the agenda on the recodification.
Okay, thanks, Ron. So I think some of us tuned into the Board of Selectmen meeting last night, and the Becky, correct me if I'm wrong, or Chris or Gary, I know you were there. The Board of Selectmen voted to postpone the spring town meeting until at least basically the end of April, sometime the week of April 25th or 26th. But they did not set a date. The thought was that they would have, so I think the line of strategy went, although that's the only definitive thing they said. I think that their feeling was that they would hold a business meeting for the budget and probably the LCD changes, zoning changes, and any other time-sensitive matters at that meeting in late April, potentially or early May. Subsequently, in June, either indoors or outdoors, depending on the public health situation, they would hold a meeting which would include all of our zoning changes. So that's a little bit unclear for us. Yeah, Gary, go ahead.
I spoke to Ann Harrison about it today, and she agreed it was a bit vague, but she also said there's a fair chance that they might do the 25th, 26th of April, 2 days in a row, and address our zoning issues also. So that's up in the air, but possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's, I think we just don't know. So I think we have to proceed as if we might have zoning on the agenda with about a three weeks delay from the April 4th, which means we're still kind of pedal to the metal. And the big issue is, when do we time our public hearing? So so stay tuned on that. Then Ron and I talked about putting the LCD changes on the same public hearing schedule we had previously talked about, which is February 28th at a regular meeting, for a couple of reasons. One is we're ready, and let's just move it forward with a public hearing. Secondly, the Cricket had a article that said that this would be discussed at February 28th. You know, in order to avoid public confusion on the LCD matter, that it seemed like it made sense. And so we did post for just a public hearing at a regular meeting on the 28th for the LCD changes. That went into the Cricket today, and will run for 2 weeks. So that we made that decision to move that forward. The other thing that happened, that didn't happen last night, but we reminded them, is that I reminded the board that we had asked for town council to review the LCD changes, and so they remembered that, and we'll take it up. And the last other thing is that the Board of Selectmen asked us to come and give them an update of where we are at their next meeting, which is February 22nd. So we'll come back to that when we talk about the discussion of information for the public. But that's the summary from the Board of Selectmen's meeting. Anybody else that was there listening in have anything to add?
Um,
Oh.
I'd like to suggest that if we have a public hearing on just the LCD issue, that we also proceed and vote that same night.
It seems like that's.
That may be problematic, and if we get some comments that we may want to incorporate.
Yeah, but it gives us time. It gives us time to think about comments or it gives us ample time, actually. So
just before you move on, Sarah, I did send out a letter that Mr. Gilbert wrote on the LCD to the board, asking for comments on it, because I think we wanted to have something in the cricket on what we're doing. And I don't know, Gary, if you got any back, but I didn't see any, and I would like to move that forward to the cricket.
Ron, there was an article that was done by the Cricket's reporter, who I think is on this call. Is that JB's? Is that Cricket reporter? I believe so.
Ron, I didn't solely author that brief. It was a very, very brief article. I worked on it with Chris only, so it wasn't a solo thing.
So we're thinking that the article in the cricket is sufficient.
I don't think so. I think what we wrote is more precise. He made a couple of technical errors in what he wrote in his text.
I don't think it hurts to have it in again. Oh, Chris, you're on mute.
I think maybe closer to the public hearing might be good.
Not this
Okay.
week after.
Yeah.
Okay. So given.
So I think I did submit some comments, and there was just the one line that I was like, why don't we actually say exactly what we're doing instead of things like, so I did forward the comments. So I just wanted to make sure someone found them.
Okay. Gary,
Ron,
you
did you get them?
To you, Gary and Ron. I sent something brief.
Gary, I think if you can look for those comments and circle back with Chris to finalize it, that would be great.
Are we allowed to do that? Chris and I could figure this out and get it out tomorrow. Okay, I don't.
You can't get it out. It doesn't matter because it's the deadline for the cricket is today. We're on Tuesday schedule, not Monday. So I think we have a week.
I didn't see those comments. I'll go back and look for them. Yeah. Becky has a comment.
Just on this, Laura used track changes. I want to make sure you know how to use track changes. So if you can't find them, circle back with Christine and Laura. And then I think the process we talked about last time is just run it through Ron before you send it, as you send it out to the, before you send it to the cricket. Becky. Oh, now you're muted.
I just have a question, and it's, will this also be put on the town website? So the town website and the cricket, I don't see anything right yet on.
Yep. So that we have an agenda item to talk about information for the public. So stay tuned on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Part of it is what we're going to have done. So we put a big agenda together for tonight, assuming that we would have an April 4th town meeting. We're tired. I'm tired also. And we've met a lot. So we thought, Chris and I thought it would make sense to whittle down the things we're going to talk about tonight. Hopefully you got my email to that effect. Sections 1 through 4, much of which we've already talked about. The stormwater bylaw, because Chuck Dam wants to move that forward. And then what our strategy is on those other items. So let's just, is Mark Bobrowski on the call?
Sarah, he said he would be able to join us at 7.
7, right, I've forgotten about that. Okay. So as you guys saw, I made an attempt, I don't know if it was a good thing or a bad thing, to try to take our sort of nearing final versions and move them to PDFs with line numbers so that it's easier to talk about them. Now the problem is going to be to edit them in real time, but I think I can do that. But it will mess up some of the line numbers. And my thought is that this, I'm jumping around a little bit, but the format that we have in those PDFs that looks something like this. I think for anybody who hasn't had a chance to look at it, oops, sorry. Where we have the motion that would be entered in town meeting floor with the existing bylaw section here and line numbers on the left, will allow us, I hope, to have a discussion in a public meeting, public hearing, that is able for people to can be specific about that. And Alan, the other thing is, by way of update, Chris and I met with Alan and Greg just to say, here's what's coming. We kind of walked them through the various sections. And Alan thought that this was a format that would work well for town meeting. So we'll try it. I think all of you also saw that issues table. I saw a bunch of you were entering things into that, so we'll use that tonight to try to look at that. Are people able to bring this PDF up on their computer at the same during the meeting? Is anybody not able to do that?
I'm not able to, but I have a printout version.
Yeah, well, okay, so that's the same thing. Okay, so we, in terms of sections 1 through 4, we did, I'm not sure if we voted, I think we actually voted, but we had consensus that sections 1, 2, and 3 were near final. Mary did look at some definitions and proposed some additional ones, which I highlighted in blue. And so let's just first, in terms of the issues to discuss table, I'm gonna just move that to my other screen. I don't see any comments in the issues table that people identified in section 1. And I think we had gone through that last time.
I would just like to make a comment again. I've made it before that section 1, line numbers didn't print out on my version, but it's the last item under 1.1, the implementing the recommendations of the town's master plan as adopted by the planning board. I don't think that should be in a zoning bylaw. Zoning ordinances are law, and I don't think we should be mixing the two of a master plan that is not enforceable. It fluctuates. It's, it's relevant at a point in time, and then that can change quickly. So I don't see how zoning bylaws should be used to implement a master plan. It's master plan's recommendations. It's not law.
Okay, can I suggest that we take that up when Mr. Borowski comes and see if it's commonplace with what people typically do, and then we can just have a vote one way or the other on that?
Sure.
Okay. Somebody, Mary, will you remind me when he comes on, please? So, okay, so that's the only thing on with section 1. Section 2, definitions. There were some comments in the table of issues that we had some redundancy on. Hospital was redundant. What I thought we would also do is get Mr. Bobrowski to make any comments on these issues. Height, I thought was, so I added the yellow because I thought that, and I'm hoping that Mr. Bobrowski can solve some of these. The blue is simply ones that Mary had identified as being omitted. And she suggested language that I just cut and pasted in here. So the comments that Christina, you had one around restaurant, ghost kitchen. Let's see, any comments before restaurant, ghost kitchen?
Yeah, contractor's yard. The way that's worded, that could mean just two sawhorses and a stack of lumber somebody's got on the side of his property. It seems to be way too vague. We started regulating regular people doing regular things.
So this obviously was just taken from another town zoning bylaws. I mean, it does clarify that it's a building contractor or subcontractor, so totally fine if somebody comes up with more detailed verbiage.
It seems
I'd be happy to suggest that. I'm a little bit concerned about the term, but it's not a huge issue, but who's a contractor? How do you define that? You're going to ask for somebody's license, and what is storage of equipment and supplies? It could get to be
and that's relevant because we restrict
yes.
the contractor's yard.
Yeah, we do need a definition, I believe, because we mentioned it in our law.
Mhm.
Um,
I mean, it says storage. I think that's enough. I mean, if there's an active building permit on, that should eliminate any confusion. If there's no active building permit and it's closed, then there shouldn't be storage of equipment. I don't know.
Well, maybe that's the answer, is to say, except for properties that are undergoing construction with a valid building permit.
No, my point is, if you have a small-time carpenter in town and he stores some of his equipment on a couple sawhorses on the side of his house, he's not using it for his own house construction. He's using it on jobs. Is he prohibited from doing that? Is that so unsightly that we have to prohibit and regulate people's storage of materials with tarps over them? That
Do we prohibit it?
Sorry, did I just, can you still see my screen? Or did I change?
Yes, yeah, no, we see it.
Sorry. Again, maybe we can ask Mark for a suggestion. That makes sense. Can we
Yeah.
come back to that? Okay. I've asked him to look at all of these definitions.
Sarah, I have a question on dwelling units.
Yep.
So we clarify for a two-family, basically that they need to share a firewall, yet we don't do that for a multifamily, and I don't know why.
well, they would be sharing a fire-rated assembly. Wall's not the best term, but a fire-rated assembly, yeah, they would be. They both would be. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm just saying, why do we have that clarification on two-family, not multifamily?
We should probably include it on multifamily.
Okay.
If they're detached, they're not going to have a fire-rated assembly that separates them, and there's no issue. But if they're attached, they would have it.
Well, at least for a two-family, they have to be attached.
And multifamily too, otherwise they become multiple dwellings on a lot. So
Right.
no longer multifamily. I
Okay.
agree.
Give me 1 second here. I'm
I'm just,
gonna,
if I can make another comment before we get up to R, just let me know when.
Yep. Can you just hold 1 second? I'm actually going to be able to do this in real time, which is, I think will be better. Then we'll have a record. Shoot. Why okay.
Okay, you've stopped sharing.
Yeah, I had to just, I'm now adding,
Okay.
I have this live now. Okay, so multifamily. So I'm just gonna make a note here. And this is to,
The multifamily, yeah.
Sarah, while you're on that one,
Go ahead, Sue.
would you take a comment?
yeah,
Yeah.
I just wonder, while we're updating language and these, if you might want to consider it time to take out the word family and use single unit, multi-unit, 2 unit, as many communities are doing, because family is a nebulous and
so strike that and put in unit.
No, well, we did go through a whole thing with Mr. Bobrowski about family, so we have defined family in here.
yeah, I'm suggesting that you forego the trying to define what a family is and go to unit. It might save a lot of angst and discomfort for some people. So just a thought for the board's consideration.
One or more persons occupying a dwelling unit and living as a single housekeeping unit. How many times do we have that? I don't have a strong feeling. It's up to you guys.
I agree with Sue.
I think we just keep it as is. I mean, I don't know.
I think we don't need to do that one in real time. I'm gonna just highlight that. So do we need to take a vote on that to just decide it?
So you have family in the definition as well.
Right, we have it down here.
I
No, I
just
mean,
think it's
no, no,
opening up a can of worms that there's gonna be a lot of places in the zoning bylaws that you're gonna have to change that.
Yeah, I think we should do a search. We should do a careful search.
Right.
I
Okay,
mean, in the definition of a single family dwelling unit, says it's suitable for a family.
but then a family is one or more persons occupying a dwelling
Yeah.
unit.
I don't know, I don't feel very strongly about one way or the other.
I think before we make the change, I understand we're trying to modernize here, but I think we should need to go through the whole bylaw and make sure that we need to make 85 changes, or so that'd be my suggestion. So I just made it a note to do a search for the word family, and then okay, if that's okay. Does anybody object to that?
No.
All right. So I
Sarah,
added,
just a thing on optics, on the side by side, the
Yeah.
2.0 starts in the 1.0 section. I was wondering if
Yeah.
you could kind of cut and move it down a little for clarity. It's just a minor thing, but
I will try to do that when I put it up on the web. It turns out that, getting in the weeds here, this has to be a text box. And so it
oh, I
does,
see.
it
You
does,
can't cut and move it.
it doesn't, I tried columns and you know, it doesn't, it just,
Doesn't play well on Word, probably.
yeah, it's a word problem.
Yeah.
Or
So
if you made another text box and put it there, just a blank text box, would that maybe help?
that would probably work. I can work on that. Align text boxes. Okay, I think that is, to the extent that we can do that, I think that would be helpful. The other thing is I think section 2 could start its own page. I noticed that. Okay, so we did this note we had from before, cross reference with the use table. Mary did, and that's what all the blue definitions are. So I'm deleting that note.
Though Sarah, I do think there's definitions in here that we have to delete that we don't have. And if we have them in the future, we can add them in the future, but I I think it's confusing.
What do people think about that? I'm not sure I agree with you on that.
I don't agree with that. There's no, how could there be confusion if you don't use the term? We can put them in here. If they're not used, they don't hurt anybody. I don't see a confusion as being an issue. But what specific definition?
What's an example?
Well, we have funeral home, we have, let me go through. Drive-in, drive-throughs.
Yeah, we should maybe ask Mark. We did ask him once about that, but obviously we don't think either of those will ever be built in town. So we should maybe ask him briefly, why are they even in there?
Well, that's basically my point. I mean, we could add 100 definitions that we don't have. I mean, I don't really see
Right.
why.
Okay, well, we'll take that up when he gets here. Good suggestion. Greenhouse, I don't know if I crossed out non-commercial, but that did trigger why just a non-commercial? Why are we just defining it in the definitions as commercial or non-commercial? And you guys thought about that before I came along. Is the commercial designation important for the definitions?
I can imagine that a commercial facility would come with pesticide and other chemical use. So I don't know if that was what this was about.
Not
Do we have-
necessarily.
Could be regulated.
We
Do we
need,
even
There was a
mention
greenhouse
that?
on Vine Street.
Let's
Sorry.
so Christina, go ahead.
I just thought there was a greenhouse on Vine Street before. So I was trying to scroll up to blue, so I can't see. What was blue? Is this completely new?
Yeah, there was a definition that Mary had identified, definitions that were used, words that were used elsewhere in the bylaw and not defined. So she went through carefully.
no, yeah, just in the use table.
Oh, in the use table.
Oh, okay.
The greenhouse is allowed. But I just don't think we need non-commercial in the definition of a greenhouse. A greenhouse is a greenhouse, whether it's organic or commercial or a large.
I guess you're talking about it as a structure as opposed to a use.
Yeah,
Commercial
Yeah, and
use greenhouse. might
That
have
was
some other-
probably just plucked from where I copied it. They probably hadn't defined it as a non-commercial.
okay. Are you okay if I cross out non-commercial? Does anybody
Fine.
object to that? Okay. Okay, zone one, those all come from height of a building. Oh, I did have one, sorry. Frontage, it's called lot frontage here. I think it's, or, sorry, I'm making you sick to your stomach here. Frontage, it's not called frontage. And maybe it's called site frontage or something, we'll get to it. But the definition in here is different than in the subdivision control law.
Oh, yeah, you made a note on there on that.
Yeah, so I just think we should have them with the same definition. Unless there's a so we'll get to that, sorry. Height of the building, my thought is that Mark should review this one, but
So can I go back to, so with the ground and surface water definition that's in here?
yeah.
I'm wondering why we have that bulk of a definition in here and in the bylaw, yet we don't have the floodplain even in the definitions at all.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mary's right. This shouldn't be in here at all.
yeah, I think. So this is defined in the overlay district. And we basically just, I believe this was cut from the overlay district and copied here. So do we need it is the question.
Do we need a definition of those terms?
Well, it's defined in section 10.3.
Okay, then,
This is a duplicate.
I'll
I
take
agree.
it out.
Yeah. I think Mary is correct. We should treat it similarly. They should be, when we have an overlay district, we should just allow that district to define itself or be defined in its section. Makes sense,
We don't define any other districts,
right?
so I think this should be taken out.
Okay, anybody object to that?
As long as it's exact duplication of 10.3,
Well, it would be
Right.
worse if it wasn't, right?
right?
Okay, I'm
We're
gonna,
not gonna lose anything.
you know what, I will double check that. Make sure that we haven't,
And Mr. Bobrowski is on the line.
oh, hi, Mark,
Good
welcome.
evening, everyone.
Okay,
Good evening, Mark.
okay, so Mark, we're just walking through sections, the definition section, which we kept as section 2 against your, contrary to your judgment to move it to the end for a bunch of renumbering reasons, but that's where it is for now, for forever.
Okay.
And so let's just continue through the definitions and we'll go back to the other issues. So if you had any, the blue were new definitions that we identified as being missing, but referred to through the bylaw. So so any comments on height?
I feel like we've had a difference of opinion between which could be taller, 2.5 stories or 35 feet. So is there a way that we could clarify that?
I don't think there's a problem with that. You're allowed 2.5 stories as long as it doesn't exceed 35 feet.
Right.
So
This is, the definition is separate from whether we want it to be 2.5 stories or 35 feet. So right now we're talking about the definition.
Okay.
this definition on height is what I worked up with the building inspector through multiple conversations, if I recall correctly, unless somebody changed it since 2 years ago.
Well, this was missing from the version that I inherited, so.
It was
Any
missing?
comment on this, Mr. Bobrowski?
No,
Okay,
No, I think this is the definition that Gary's referring to.
okay. I should be taking off the blue. Okay, good. Hospital, I did identify that in some other version, we had human or animal hospital. And that's why I put that in. I think animal hospitals should be included in hospitals, don't you think?
no,
No?
they should be included in veterinary clinics, but not hospitals.
Okay,
Totally different traffic patterns, totally different parking lots, very different land use.
okay, great. So,
There may
get
be a
rid of-
definition for veterinary clinic. You might scroll to the back and see if you have that.
Okay, so I will in a second. So we
Okay.
should strike inpatient services. We should strike that. For diagnosis, trim the other and get
We do
rid
have
of.
we do have veterinary facility or clinic, line 373.
Okay, good. Other care of just say human ailments or just,
Sure.
okay. All right, good. Thank you. And you said hospital was redundant, Mayor, Christina? Let's see.
Oh, Sarah,
Sorry, Sarah.
So yeah,
End of
sorry.
hospital said veterinary
So yeah,
services.
Sarah, keep going back up in that. There's veterinary at the end.
Okay, sorry. Thank you.
Strike that.
Yep.
doesn't hospital raise the same question that was raised earlier by Mary, drive-ins and things like that? We're never going to see a hospital or
Right.
a
probably.
funeral home here, and maybe Mark could comment on some of those uses that
If we have senior housing, we may have the definition of a hospital within
Yeah.
the senior housing.
For sure. Potentially. I mean, yeah.
Would it rise to the level of being a hospital or a clinic or?
As that's defined.
Well, the clinic is defined by a state CMR, so.
Okay. So Mark, the question came up whether should we be defining, including things in our definitions that we do not reference elsewhere in the zoning bylaw?
No, I think it probably should stick to the terminology used in the bylaw.
Okay, so maybe to that end, Mary, you can work with me on identifying things that we should table, push aside, that are not, does that make sense? Right, I don't want to try to do that in this meeting.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And just so people know that hospital, the reason it's in there is it's referenced in the use table.
Yep.
That you can do that, so.
Yep. Okay. Impervious surface was discussed with the LCD. I think that's okay. And Laura had suggested that we not include pervious surface, so we just reference impervious surface.
I have a
Pervious
question.
gets a little bit gray.
I have a question for Laura on this. It prohibits, I mean, shouldn't there be a percentage used in here or something? Because some of these pavers, you know very well, they allow some penetration and some sheet flow, and it's really a trade-off between one and the other.
No, I think then you're talking about a pervious paver. An impervious surface is a land cover that prohibits the flow of water through it.
Yeah.
Such as what?
Asphalt.
It
Such
prohibits
as pavement, a roof. I don't think we need to define all the types of pervious or impervious pavement. The thing is that it's the cover that prohibits water penetration.
So if it allows some water penetration, then it's not. Impervious.
Yeah, I don't think we ought to get into defining percentages here. That ought to be in the, site permit review where we look at stormwater.
I'm just poking at this because it's the kind of term that the Conservation Commission should probably has had to deal with over the years.
Good
So,
point. Happy to have them look at it and see if they agree with it. Or I don't know if Mr. Bobrowski has an opinion on whether this is typical.
The only time I usually see pervious used in a bylaw would be if the bylaw called for pervious pavement.
I think we decided we're not going to include pervious, but the question is this appropriate as an impervious definition?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. On 222 solar, I think that's what we did before. We should take that out because it's defined in the 10.1. That's just a repeat. If anybody disagree with that? That's just what's in 10.1. I will double check that. Light manufacturing. Seems like it's fine. This is lot frontage. This is slightly different than the subdivision control definition. The subdivision control law says providing rights of access across the boundary to a potential building site. But I'm not sure actually that is essential, that is correct in zoning. So
yeah, that's more about what it is, not about the distance and how to measure it. I think this is one that we tried to work out with the building inspector to try to take the ambiguity out of the stranger frontages.
Okay.
Should we use the word continuous angle or curve so it's not broken up?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yes.
The continuous distance, continuous.
Something to keep it so it, you can't stop it.
Right, it's not on 3 different bits. Is the street or right of, should say or right of way?
Wouldn't
No.
the street be the right of way?
Yeah, I agree with, I don't think
the way it
or
is.
is in.
All right.
Yeah, I don't think you need right of way.
Okay. And lot width, we took out the little graphic that's in our current bylaw. I think that's fine. Everybody should read these before the public hearing, but the non-conforming use or structure. Now,
Sarah?
last
Sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Marijuana, you just went past it.
Which one?
Don't you have the same issue? Do we have to have those definitions in there if there's a bylaw section?
Correct. Thank you. I hope the public listening is as fascinated by this as we all are. Okay, the non-conforming use, I presume that is defined in our non-conforming use section that we worked on last time. Is there a definition in that? I can look.
Sure, I think what we did, the reason those definitions are in there is because we decided that rather than have definitions in different sections, we would put them all within the definition section. So I know, so the ones that don't have their own definition sections in them, like the floodplain, perhaps they didn't have definitions already in them. That's why they're not showing up. So I don't know if Mark may want to weigh in on, but I'm seeing us cross things out when we had a previous discussion about why they should be in here and not scattered throughout the.
Yeah, I understand. I guess I would say, having thought, is that we would then have to go cross them out in the other sections. And given the process that we've now kind of morphed into, which is a renumbering, we want to reduce the amount of places we do a touch. On two fronts. One is, if you put it in this section, it is subject to review by town meeting. So, and you would have to delete it to avoid the redundancy problem. We would have to delete those sections. And so I think, but that's my opinion. Other folks have a thought.
It seems like we're worrying about minutia that's very unlikely to occur, but
right.
I defer to people with more experience.
You know, I don't mind it being defined here and in the non-conforming use section because.
Oh, this one, yeah. I think this one is fine.
I'd question, does lawfully existing need to be in there at all? If it's not, if it's an illegal use, that's a whole different animal.
Yeah, I think that's, and I'm
No.
looking at, I am just.
That doesn't work.
No, okay.
It's actually lawfully pre-existing, but the concept here is that the use or structure was created lawfully and the zoning has been amended to make it non-conforming. That is from Mendez versus Barnstable.
Or the zoning has been created, right? Are these could be structures that were created before zoning?
Yeah, it could pre-exist all zoning, but. And
Like a lot of our towns.
it's a changing concept. So for example, it's very difficult to define without a case being attached to it. I litigated the status of the Middlesex Superior Courthouse in Cambridge, the building with the red stripe on top, which was built by the county and then decommissioned. You know, it wasn't lawful in the sense that it complied with zoning. It was built under the supremacy clause, and we had a big fight about whether that was the same thing. So how do you fold that into a definition?
So a lawfully
Pre-existing. Yes.
I'm gonna remove the blue so it's easier to see. I want pre-existing use or structure and then should it say predates or which may not conform?
No, it
does not
doesn't.
conform to the current regulations.
Yeah, it's fine the way it's written.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think regardless of why it's non-conforming, because non-conforming uses could also be things that people just do, right?
No, those would be violative uses.
Oh,
And there is a longer definition in section 7.1 of the non-conforming use, which I guess is what Mr. Bobrowski wrote.
That's
Yeah.
really from the statute. That just sort of
Uh-huh.
sets the table on what you have to do to be protected. But it doesn't really define it.
yeah, it doesn't really define it.
For example, a non-conforming use is something that was allowed by right, but it's now required by special permit, and you don't have a special permit. So there's about 6 more examples of that I could give you. It's the black hole. Don't go here.
Yeah, so this seems okay as a definition then.
Yeah.
Keeping it short.
Yeah.
Okay.
Short and vague.
Okay. And this one is, while it's somewhat redundant with the prior,
I think the new definition for that is long-term care facility.
a long-term care facility.
Correct, and that's got a statutory site to it. I'll dig it out. You keep
Is
going.
is this
That's
correct?
the name though, as opposed to the nursing convalescent sanitarium or rest home, right? We're calling that
Get it?
old type. That's the long-term
That-
care facility.
Oh, that's the name,
Yeah.
the
That's the
definition.
name. Mhm.
Okay.
There we go.
Yeah.
So then
I
we
was gonna say,
need to
already have
change,
hospital, we're repeating that again. All right, that's
yeah,
fine.
you need to change use table then too.
Okay.
Sarah,
Yes.
back on building height, I found the language that I had worked up with the building inspector, where we reference the average of the elevations taken at 20-foot intervals around the perimeter of the building. Because that, well, we felt that was a lot better than just the 4 corners.
Right, and it's under the lot mean, construction mean grade, and the previous, our previous definition referred to that. So I
Okay.
think,
But can we just let's focus on long-term care facility first, and then come back to that one. Okay, so
I'm looking it up.
okay, you're looking that up. All right, let's go back to height. Let's see, what did you just say? The grade is the mean grade? Well, we have height. No, height of the building. Oh, take it from the mean grade.
It's 105 CMR 150.001.
Can you just put that in the chat for me, please?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're talking about height. The height of the building is the vertical distance measured from the mean grade of the existing ground adjoining each exterior wall, the highest point of the roof. Mean grade is determined by measuring the elevation of the major exterior corners of the structure and then dividing the total elevation by the number of points of the measurement.
that's the part that we redefined because of the changes in topography that are common, and we redefined it under mean grade, a construction mean grade, and it was at intervals of 20 feet. I can
Okay.
try to put that in the chat if it's helpful.
Yeah, if everybody's okay with that, at least I will continue to keep that one colored, and maybe we can just get the new one. The working definition. Okay. But I'll leave it colored so that people can see what that is. I'm not going to try to do that now. Okay, and impervious surface we took out. Printing. Mary, these are ones that Mary had identified. Printing for small scale users. I was wondering why we had for small scale users in here. I mean, you could have I didn't know what that meant, I didn't
Then
think we
how you-
needed that.
What would it be? How would you decide what a small scale is?
I thought it was kind of a hard, I mean, I know you took these from other places. So I just think blueprints and the light, just take out small scale. It'd be my recommendation.
That makes sense.
Okay. Private club, I wasn't sure why we had nonprofit. I mean, just take in Manchester, the Manchester Athletic Club, the Essex County Club, neither of those are nonprofit. Manchester Yacht Club, none of those are nonprofit.
I think we have private club, we separate it in the use table.
Okay,
Um,
do you have them here?
What's the Legion or the Masons?
Nonprofit, but nonetheless, but here you have private club, nonprofit, and private club, nonprofit again.
yeah, I'm just trying to find it in the use table. I mean, I kind of wouldn't have just made this up, so. let me
No, I
see.
know, but I'm just trying to figure out why we have them twice. So look at that and then we'll come back to it. Public utility, those are pretty, that's pretty standard. Recreational club, again, is for profit. I feel like that you could have a non-profit recreational club, like a 4-H club or a,
Yeah, so we have a line item here, indoor recreational club or facility operated for profit.
Okay.
And we don't have one for a nonprofit.
I guess.
Would it make any difference in terms of enforcing the
difference.
zoning? Are we gonna differentiate and give somebody who's for-profit a special permit, but not a non-for-profit?
Right.
I guess if they're commercial, they might,
Well, that's a
Being a commercial
commercial
zone.
use.
yeah.
So we should just be clear and take that for profit out of the use table as well.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, Chris, can you make a note of that so that I,
Yeah,
okay. So I think we can get rid of private club. Maybe just get rid of the first one and,
It looks like you need, I
Don't
don't know why you have it at all, because we have recreational club
Right.
down before. And I don't know if we have
That's
private club in the use table.
I think we did.
Yeah, I don't know that, were those
I
from
didn't
me?
see it. I didn't see it.
I
Okay,
don't think those are from me.
okay,
If we are gonna list them, let's list them under club, private, club, recreational. So all the clubs are in one place.
Oh, here we go. No, we do. We have a community or private club under community facilities.
Yes, that's where it is.
okay. Well, we come back. Why don't we just group those so that they're consistent with the use table. Okay.
Qualified acre, $1,000. I mean, this is arbitrary. $1,000 today could be $10,000 next
Right.
year. I don't know. It seems.
I think
doesn't
that's
seem
anything
like the
but.
right way to-
That's a state term, is it not, Mr. Bobrowski?
It's in the definition in chapter 48, section 3.
Okay. There we go.
And it it never changes. I mean, with inflation or.
Hasn't changed yet. It's only about, I'd say about 8 or 10 years old, but it hasn't been upped, if that's what you're asking, even though food went up 5 or 6% last month. So.
Well,
Seems silly.
paying
it's a-
land, that's
it's a floor anyway, so who cares?
Yeah.
On
Okay.
restaurant, why on restaurant do we have to refer to tables of booze? I mean,
Yeah.
with COVID, we might have a pure takeout place sometime, or. It's more about serving food, selling food, isn't it?
Well, the traditional definition of restaurant is a sit-down restaurant. And then everything spins off that: fast food, drive-through. You just have a spin on it, that's all. There are actually places that still require restaurants to be sit down.
Okay, so there's a couple important things here. One is the term restaurant shall not include fast food restaurants. Is that? Let's start, I'm working from the back. Are we okay with that portion of the definition? I don't know what fast food is.
That prohibits fast food in town. That's what that sentence does. It prohibits them because we don't allow the use.
Yeah, but what's fast food nowadays? Like if I run in and get a pizza, is that fast food?
No.
Yeah, we're thinking the Golden Arches, I know.
At the
but-
gas station in town, they make sandwiches and you turn and get in your car and leave with them. Is that
Right.
fast food?
Bravo by the sea.
So the
Well, it's not-
question,
I don't know where this definition came from, but it would make more sense if what we're trying to do is say that it's not a drive-through restaurant.
right. Well, now everybody has curbside.
So that could mean McDonald's could come as long as it didn't have a drive-through.
Plenty of those.
I don't know
think-
what the intent was.
I think we should remove the part about fast food. Just remove that part.
So the restaurants are allowed in, they are specified in the use table.
I don't think that we want a chain restaurant in town. I don't.
Well, that, I think the question is, I mean, what's a chain restaurant?
Callis, Bravo, both chains.
So restaurants are
chains.
currently allowed by right in the general district.
Mhm.
And we don't want to prohibit chain restaurants either. We not want to see them personally, but we don't need to go out of our way to prohibit them. But fast food seems unnecessarily restrictive.
Mark, what do you suggest on this?
Well,
Or does it,
if you think about banning fast food, you're headed straight into the jaws of interstate commerce because the 12 fastest food restaurants are all nationally prominent firms. What, for example, do you think has the most franchises?
Dunkin'
Well,
Donuts?
we already
Subway.
have a Dunkin' Donuts.
Subway.
Yeah.
And then there's McDonald's, and you get just a long list all the way down to Taco Bell, and that's the top 10 right there. I wrote an article about this. If you ban fast food, it has an unreasonable impact on interstate commerce.
Okay, so we can't ban fast food. Is that what you're saying?
I would just, it depends on how you do it, but long story short, if you don't want fast food, then there are specific kinds of bylaws that define fast food as having, napkins and plastic spoons, and the plates are all paper, and you got to do the research of looking that stuff up. It's not just, that was fast. It's more complicated than that.
We don't ban it currently. It's in our use table.
Yeah, if it's not really an issue because no one's ever tried to put one here.
So I think the only thing is if we're defining restaurant, if we're not defining fast food restaurant, that's what we need to do. So do we define fast food restaurant? Is that in the definition?
I think it's a slippery slope.
Do we want something in the LCD? You're just allowing it in the general district, but do we want it in the LCD? That's going to create more traffic. What are we visioning here?
I think that we're not trying to change what we're doing. I think we're just
Right.
trying to define the uses that are in the use table. Right now, we have two different uses. One's a restaurant, one's a fast food restaurant. This is saying that restaurant the definition cannot be used for the fast food restaurant. So I'm suggesting that if it's in our use table, we should define fast food restaurant in some way.
We
I
want
think
to
that's what we're
include a
trying to do.
fast, yeah, do we want to really include fast food restaurants in our use table, or do we want to remove those? That's the other thing.
I thought we removed them.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that for the purposes of this term, we take out this sentence. And that we're asking that some indoor sales and consumption of food on the premises be at least. So I think that in all of the current restaurants, we think of our current restaurants, Dunkin' Donuts, anything else that you can eat inside, you can also take it to go. So for the purposes of a definition, maybe we want to have reduce this to half of its legal capacity? I don't know. Hard to say. Maybe I'm gonna highlight it for us to just kind of think a little bit more about that one, because time is going by. Oop. Okay. Senior housing. So this is another thing. We don't have this. We're going to talk a little bit later about this bylaw briefly, but this is the same issue of that the new section 9.4 that we might propose will actually have these definitions in it. So I think we can, following the same line of reasoning, we can take them out of the definitions. Does that make sense to people?
No, I think that's what we were trying not to do.
I know, but
Yeah,
We're following a pattern of going back to our olds because we're too afraid to do something that's making it more reasonable. Just because we've always done it some way, I don't think that's a reason.
And is this Mark's language? In which case,
yeah,
it's probably okay.
And his recommendation to
a new change,
which we agreed on.
So then we'll have to have so if, let's just go to marijuana or watershed district, whatever it is, watershed overlay.
The water resource
And
overlay.
have it in two places, or we have to delete the sections that define it if we leave it in the definitions. And
Well, I think if you can leave it in there, it's not objectionable if you leave it in there.
And are these
To take
state
it out at another
definitions?
time.
In which case, there's no reason to spend time debating them.
Yeah, these are all state definitions.
So why don't we leave them in there and move on?
I think the question is whether we the big question to me is whether we use some of these specific uses, whether we have the definitions in that use or we move them into the definitions table. I guess I don't feel too strongly one way. I just don't want to have them twice. I think that's a bad idea. But
And my only comment on it is if we're doing it for some, we have to do it for all.
agreed. Mark, do you have any wisdom on that?
Well, I like them in the back, so I guess I've been overridden.
Well,
Actually, Mark, you had suggested they're either in the front or in the back, but all together, I think is what your earlier said. And we had voted for the back, but now we're saying they're kind of in the front because they're in number section 2, but they all should be together unless people have changed their view.
Yeah, if we have them in both places, we better make damn sure they say the same thing, so they don't contradict each other. I'm for like having it in one spot.
When we say the back, are we talking about a separate glossary or are we just talking about the sequence of the definitions?
Just to bring you up to speed, Laura, the original proposal for reordering and reorganizing the zoning bylaw had definitions as the last section, I believe. And when we did renumbering at November's meeting, because we were so constrained, we made a decision to keep definitions as section 2 because it dramatically reduced the numbers of renumbering things that we had to do, keep track of, and avoid making mistakes on. So,
right. Okay.
So it was simply a procedural thing to try to get, and I think we succeeded in getting our zoning bylaws renumbered in at least largely the way that was proposed, with the exception of the definitions are stayed in 2 instead of 12.
Yeah, and I think, Laura, what we were trying to correct, more broadly speaking, is that definitions were in many different sections of the bylaw, and we were trying to consolidate them in one place. So you wouldn't have to go to section 4 to understand what mean grade was. So,
And in fact, there are only 7, I think, terms defined in the current bylaw.
Right.
Okay, well, let me suggest that Chris and I, like our little working group, look at what it would take to eliminate the redundancy on these couple of issues, overlay districts, marijuana, and put the definition and figure out procedurally at a town meeting, which is what I'm trying to get these things done, is where I'm coming from. And if we have them in the definitions, I think they need to be deleted from the body of the bylaw, which we successfully have done. So what Chris and I, if you're okay with that, we'll kind of make a recommendation back on that. Okay. Sign, we had said 6.4 because that's the section on signs. There isn't a definition of a sign there. I don't know if we need one, but we had referenced when we had done this back in November, we had said, oh, we'll just use the definition from 6.4. I went to get it and there is no such thing.
I have a question on this one. I think I asked the question 2 years ago to Mark. Wouldn't it be better to regulate signs in the general bylaw and not the zoning bylaw?
Yes, because it has the added advantage of being retrospective as well as prospective. So in other words, if somebody sign falls into disrepair, you could go after it.
And you can assess penalties in the general bylaw, but not in the zoning bylaws.
You can assess penalties in the zoning bylaws. It's just a rigmarole. You've got to go to court unless you have non-criminal disposition.
Well, so basically it's way more effective and quicker. And it's not such an acute land use issue that it needs to be in the zoning bylaws. It seems to me general bylaws, I think they might already mention signs, in fact.
Well, to give you, the call I was on just before I came here was Sharon, and they moved theirs into the general bylaws years ago. So if you want to see an example of a general bylaw, just Google Sharon Stein bylaw.
Well, why don't we take a look at that very quickly? We may decide to do it next fall or something, but I think it's a good strategy.
I could do that independently and just report back to the whole group.
Great.
Sounds good. Great. Okay, so let's we're not worried about this for the moment. I'm gonna okay, story was not defined. So Mary pulled this from somebody else's. I'm not sure it needs to be human occupation was my thought on this.
I worked up a definition for story that seems to have vanished. That was written up. I just had it open on my desktop. Why are we inventing a new definition?
We're not, well, this is what I got from the process. It's very easy to lose things. I didn't see anything added here. So if there's a working definition, Gary, what do you propose?
I haven't studied this text here, but I know that I had worked up one before. Can we do this through SharePoint?
Sure.
Later?
Okay, sure. This is, okay, and same with I'm gonna put the half. Okay, street, swimming pool.
Sarah, can I ask a question about swimming pool? Because swimming pool is also listed in the use table with tennis courts. So we haven't defined tennis courts, and we also are saying that swimming pools are going to be by right by the building inspector. But we don't say anything about, oh no, but then the tennis courts are with the planning board. I'm not clear on that.
Yeah, that's something we have to work out, actually.
Okay, so we can do that. That's a different part, but I didn't know if there should be a tennis court definition in here.
I can tell you the building inspector does not see the tennis courts as a structure.
Yeah, I think we should definitely fly these by our building inspector.
Well,
Okay.
yeah,
The
the
definition.
impervious surfaces and everything else.
I read that. Okay, so that's our zone. That's our definitions. Phew.
I have a few
Districts.
comments. I think we missed. There was a
Wait
few
a minute,
comments.
stop. Hold on. I can't see everybody. So who had a comment?
So I think under the chemicals that you just passed, I was wondering if we should add PFAS to the end. It was line 372.
I'm sorry if you had mentioned that before, I apologize.
Toxic, yep. It looks different when I looked at it under these.
This is what was there, I think. So
So this was different. Actually, I thought the other
These are
listed
processes.
I'm sorry.
These are processes. Dry
No,
cleaning.
exactly. No. I was looking at something different earlier.
So toxic chemicals have a statutory definition, right?
Yeah. That's on a list that I think we had intended to move out of zoning. But I'm not sure that we were successful in moving that
I
out.
think this is part of the water overlay district.
Well, so within the definition, it describes some things. So maybe if we wanted to add PFAS there.
PFAS is I believe that Mark, isn't there a definition under like the Toxic Use Reduction Act has a definition of toxic waste.
I'm sure RECRA does, and I'm
Yeah.
sure there are others as well. There's state and federal definitions.
So why don't we use those?
Why don't you just say as defined by federal or state law?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Massachusetts law is more stringent on some things than federal, so why don't we just stick with state,
Sure.
right? Like PFAS is defined as 20 parts per trillion and the federal law is different at this point?
We're not.
Or
defining-
State law.
say which is more stringent? I don't know.
Well, what
Seems likely.
about federal or state law? Because that includes both chemicals and wastes. This is, and these are
So-
processes. Can I get rid of all this?
Why
Mhm.
just say any, why can't you say any substance or mixture of chemicals as defined by federal or state law?
Oh, sorry. Okay, we're gonna come back, we're gonna, have to proof this whole thing. All right, okay.
I have a question about yard. We talk about the initial definition of yard. Can you scroll up for a second?
You see that? Oh, sorry.
There we go. So I guess in the first 380, so in the definition, a portion of a lot upon which the principal building is situated unobstructed, artificial from the ground to the sky, except otherwise. So my question here is, why are we defining these if, is there any use that's allowed on them, such as, and my question is parking. Can you park in a yard?
We already prohibit that from the front yard. And you can drive wherever you want. Your required parking spaces cannot be within 5 feet of the side or rear lot lines, but you can't park in your front yard except on your driveway.
So my question is, can your entire yard be a parking lot then? Are we concerned about that? Are we concerned about accessory dwelling units or turning single families into 2 families and in neighborhoods changing due to excessive parking in yards? This is my question.
I would say we're not likely to see that, and I would not be in favor of regulating, telling people they can't pave or can't have gravel on their whole front yard if they
Okay,
want it.
let's confine ourselves to the definition of yard, because that's what we're looking at right here. That's not whether we're gonna change how we use a yard, because otherwise we're gonna,
Be here all night.
yeah.
So my question is, then unobstructed artificially from the ground to the sky. So to me, I don't really understand what that means. It seems pretty vague. So you couldn't park there if then it would be obstructed. Is that what we're saying here? Is that true?
So Mark, can you help us out?
As soon as I send you this chat that contains a definition of toxic substances, go ahead. Which I just
Yard.
sent you. So- Oh, yard, what about it?
Yeah.
Is there
I'm
a
just-
definition of a yard?
Well, a yard is that portion of the lot which is restricted by the setback requirements. So the side yard would be, if it's a 15-foot side yard, then the yard would be from the property line 15 feet in.
We understand that. We're looking at the term unobstructed artificially from the ground to the sky, Mark.
Oh, let me see. I gotta move the chat.
So the yard doesn't include all the way up to the building wall. It's only in the setback.
It depends on where the building is, yeah, but I mean, the building could be in a yard, but then it would probably
Right.
need a variance to do it. Unobstructed artificially from the ground to the sky, except as otherwise provided here. And that means you can't put anything in your yard, basically. Your required yard.
That's Christina's point, is you can't put your car.
Well,
mean-
except as otherwise provided herein. So if driveways are allowed in the side yard, you can put your car in the side yard.
Yep.
But you can't put a 35-foot boat,
Or
No.
shed.
right? Or lobster traps or whatever.
Could you-
What's the difference between a yard and a setback?
Setback is generally used for the front. But because it sets the house back, but yard is more common for side and rear.
So could you park in a yard?
Harvard,
What was that? I didn't I'm sorry, I just didn't hear you.
Harvard yard.
yeah, you can park in a yard because it would be otherwise provided herein.
Where is
So-
that? Where is it provided herein?
The
Well,
park-
if there are regulations on locations of driveways, that would be one example. So a lot of towns say that a driveway has to be a minimum of X feet from your side property line. And if the side property yard was 15 feet and it was located in the yard, as a result, it would be otherwise provided herein.
So what does unobstructed artificially from the ground to the sky mean?
I think it means that you're not supposed to have stuff in your required yard except as provided herein.
This is really confusing.
Can I suggest that we look at what other towns do?
Sure.
Mark, is this your recommended language?
Yeah, it's pretty
I think-
customary
As
stuff. I
in,
mean,
what
Makes
other
Don't-
It's
towns
pretty
do?
customary language. Let's just take a quick look at what other people do and table that for the moment.
Keep watching your chat page.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Zoning districts, here we've called out our RD1 and RD2. I think that's the change. The zoning map, Sue, what we need is a reference to that map that you proposed. Has everybody find that? Maybe Sue, you can resend that link. I thought it looked great, but we need to be able to reference it so we can change it here.
I believe I've put it in SharePoint, and not only do I have the first one, but they recreated one that could be used as in black and white. So just need to make a choice. They're exactly, she has two showing it in black and white in color, and then it's in color. So we just need to decide which
Okay.
one we want to use. So I think they're in the SharePoint under maps. I will
Yep.
double check and make sure that they're there.
Okay, I need to know how to reference that. I just need to know like what we're gonna call it. So,
Right.
okay, so that's, maybe you can work on that. Oh God, here we get more just, so, we have more definitions here. But nonetheless, I think we had already talked about that. Now we're getting to the meat of this, which is the section 4. And I struggled about how to actually format this for the public. And I put the table of use, I guess it's the uses, at the end of the section 4, but it did have I don't know, it seemed like it made sense to put it in 4.2, so maybe we can format that, but, so permitted use, accessory uses in all districts is now 4.3. Probably should put the table here at 4.2. And I just called out sections that I needed to check to make sure that we had the right numbers. Contractor's yard, we define up above. We're still figuring, oh, we wanted to ask about that. Mark, if you can look at our contractor's yard definition and get back to us on that.
Okay.
All of these things I just cut this out of the stuff that we've done before. And then the big, Chris, swimming pools, we've now made it the inspector of buildings. Can
So
grant us-
Sarah, that's not consistent with the use table. The
Okay,
use table says it still needs a special permit.
Yeah, and that's why it's highlighted in the table.
okay.
Can I just
Because
make
there's,
to Mark?
there's also a question about tennis courts.
Okay, so this is the accessory uses in residential.
Sarah?
Hold on one second. Let's just figure out what we're talking about here. We're talking about residential accessory uses. Let's just start with the first one, borders in single family dwelling units. The general bylaws have the whole thing about, this is sort of into the whole business about VRBO and all that. I wonder if we should just reference.
Oh, this is very different. This is different.
Okay,
This is, you can actually have people living in your house with you and charge them. It's under the current bylaw. It's been this way for years and years.
all right, great. And contractor yard for the storage of building materials, provided however such use should be located on a parcel larger than 2 acres as of right, or a special permit on a smaller parcel. Special permit by whom?
Well, this is the section I wanted to comment on for Mark, if he's going to give us some, think about it between now and the next meeting is, I don't think we should be punitive like this to regular people who are just carpenters who work jobs and store stuff on sawhorses on the side of their property. At what point is it considered as a contractor's yard versus just some guy trying to make a living with, blue tarps over some stuff that's there for, I don't know, a period of time?
Well, contractors' yards and landscapers' yards are not home occupations in any jurisdiction that I know.
Okay,
So most contractors and landscapers think they are, but they're not. So the question is, how do you want to treat them? And I agree that you don't want to treat them harshly, or you're not going to have any in your town. They're going to be in Peabody. And so what I typically do is say that if it's a larger lot, you can have it either under site plan review or by special permit, but you can't have stuff visible from the road or to your neighbor.
But at what point, what if you have for 2 weeks a whole bunch of 2x4s next to your property because you're planning on getting to a job down, later on, or whatever about something?
It becomes an enforcement issue, and obviously it's not going to be an enforcement problem if it's that benign and it doesn't happen every day. But at some point, a neighbor's going to call him in, and Paul's going to have to do what he has to do. I mean, I'm a firm believer in prosecutorial discretion.
Well, 2 acres is a huge number, first of all, but
Okay,
also
make it
defining what
smaller.
Pardon?
Make it smaller.
I
Well,
think
just allow it by-
this makes total sense. I mean, you have to, these bylaws have to be for everybody, and, nobody wants to be the next door neighbor to somebody that's got, using their yard as storage. So I think it starts to pit neighbors against neighbors, and I think we have to take that into account and be preemptive in those situations.
I'm not suggesting we don't regulate it. I'm just suggesting that if a neighbor doesn't like their neighbor, this could become a bickering issue unless it's defined a little more carefully. That's all I'm saying. I do agree it should be regulated because it could become, really excessive.
I wonder if the problem is calling it a contractor's yard. Maybe we should just be talking about the storage of building materials. And maybe it's something to do with continuous storage of building materials or unscreened storage of building materials
Those are all
or
good
unsightly
ideas.
storage.
Good ideas. Why don't you write it, Chris?
I guess I will.
Yeah, those are all good ideas. Then you're not singling out a trade, you're singling out the storage.
Right, that's the thing we don't want is the.
And with the time period attached, and I'm not so sure you need to link that into multiple acres of land. It's more a question of if they're long-term storing stuff that's unsightly and not covered or screened, that's where the problem is.
So we'll make
Well,
it performance-based.
But really, I mean, we're not talking zoning, we're talking a general nuisance bylaw, aren't we? I mean, we're saying we're either permitted that you can have a contractor's yard as such, or otherwise, we're talking about stuff that you'd be able to handle at any point, which is
Well, it's a
general
residential.
which is what your general bylaws are for. We're not here, zoning bylaws aren't here to make sure your neighbor keeps a tidy yard that's what general bylaws are for.
No, but we're saying this is a residential accessory use would be the storage of building materials with some restrictions on how they're used.
No, I understand that, but is someone if they're going to rebuild a garage and they're going to come in for a special permit to allow it to stay there for, to have it there for 6 months? It seems like we're crossing the line.
I think construction is allowed. I think this says contractors. The definition we had above has contractors being like, this is their basically running their business out of their yard.
Business.
It's their
Yeah,
run.
so if we take contractors out, then we don't have that anymore.
Exactly. That's what
right.
my point was.
We
Yeah.
want to keep it as contractors because that's the,
Contractors.
yeah. So I've added a note that Chris is going to review that, and we'll also check the general bylaws here and move along here. Commercial landscaping equipment is kind of the same but different thing. We in this case talk about landscaping equipment, not the owner being a professional landscaper. So I don't know how that reconciles. Maybe that one's okay. Overnight parking of commercial vehicles owned or operated by a resident of the premises unless garage on the premises are subject to the limitations of 14,000 gross vehicle weight.
My
And
only comment about this, and I understand that we did talk about this before, is that we're proposing to reduce parking sizes in other places, and then we're allowing larger vehicles. So I just want to make sure that we're not contradicting ourselves, that there wouldn't be a spot for this large car. I think personally it's too large, but
this is a commercial vehicle. The commercial vehicles have a commercial plate, I presume.
So
So
the
I
current
know
the current bylaw allows them by right, any size commercial vehicle.
Okay. So this is actually more restrictive than the current bylaw.
Yes.
Well,
Okay.
but to Christine's point, then I think if, in these, I think when you start clarifying things and you say, class 3 and 14,000, these are city delivery trucks, they're walk-in trucks that could be idling in people's driveways. We can't then say you only need a parking space that's 9 by 18 or smaller. We need a large parking space.
Those are
It's
very
totally,
different.
it's totally
Very-
different.
Totally different issues.
How is
That
that
park on the
different?
street.
We're saying you need 2 parking spots and one of them is going to be a commercial vehicle.
It's not normal and standard for people to be driving 14,000 pound vehicles to and from their house all the time. That's a commercial use. And you
Could they
don't,
park on the street? Could they park on the street?
Sure.
That's the alternative.
without any, then you got them on the street.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I think this is a big issue. So, I mean, of course, not everybody's
But-
going to do, it, but I think it could, again,
It-
cause angst. And I think we should be doing zoning bylaws to try to prevent things, not.
I think,
Or
Mary,
something.
I think it's an issue and it's a problem, but it's not a zoning issue.
But we have this in our zoning bylaw.
Well, we don't. We allow it
don't.
right now. We don't.
We can take it out.
But that's what I'm saying. I mean, I think we should go to, if we're going to define it, we should define it with a class 1 or 2. Just my opinion.
If someone's going to park a big vehicle like that, they are actually compromising themselves. They have to make space for it. I'm sure they don't enjoy even having to do it. But we don't increase the size of the paving and the parking areas in town because of it.
So
No,
current-
that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that we're in another part of the bylaw, we're saying, let's go from a, for new development or whatever it may be, an added unit to reduce the parking size from 9 by 20 to 9 by 18. And we seem to be going one direction in one aspect of the bylaw and another direction in another. And so we're not
Totally different
syncing.
issues.
So, does anybody have a specific recommendation here that they'd like to change this?
Well, did Chris say that we don't have any mention of this in our current bylaws, and what
No,
we're doing here is actually adding
we
a
have it.
regulation?
It's mentioned, you're allowed to park a commercial vehicle on your property. That's all it says.
So now we're actually
By
getting more
right.
specific, which is
By
going
right.
in a good direction.
Yeah, we're making it more restrictive by doing this.
I support
I
this.
might add, I remember Paul Orlando saying he's never had a complaint about anybody parking a commercial vehicle in their property, so it's
Well, I think they have, and I think they part
They
of
have.
Park at
over
Brook
on
Street.
So,
Yeah.
okay, let's not debate whether we've had complaints in the past. I'd like to know if this is making this more restrictive than we currently have. Does anybody have a specific suggestion other than this that they want to have us vote on, or otherwise we're going to move on?
I would recommend we lower it from a class 3 to a class 2.
Okay, is that a motion?
No, I don't think we have, I mean, we're talking about a commercial use here. Are we limiting the vehicle size to this commercial use? I don't think this is about residential parking areas. Can you scroll back up, Sarah, just to see what this is?
Yep,
It
this
is
about-
Actually,
it's
no, no.
residential parking.
No, this is under residential accessory uses. This is not about parking. This has nothing to do with parking. It means you can have this vehicle on your premises, whether or not you have parking for it. It's independent of the parking question, and as I read it.
This is overnight parking.
But it doesn't mean that you have a parking space for it. You can park it on your lawn. Okay, I'm gonna leave it as is, and then if somebody wants to make a very specific suggestion, or maybe get a little more information with because I don't have a clear, I know you guys have talked about this before. It seems like it's from what anecdotally we hear, it's not a huge issue, but I guess it is a huge issue, but not a frequent issue. I want to get to the use table. So if you want to, I'm going to highlight it as something that we still need to think about. Swimming pools are allowed as this is under the residential accessory uses, specifically permitted by as of right or by special permit. So this is saying swimming pools in this language says the inspector of buildings may grant a building permit for swimming pool subject to the following conditions. Now, Chris, you say that that's different than the use table right now? And is
Well,
this
the use table reflects what's currently allowed, which is swimming pools by special permit. by the zoning board of
ZBA.
appeals.
So,
But it's highlighted because this is in here,
so this is a change in use,
correct?
The change in permitting.
permanent. right?
Permitting.
I've always felt that item C here is not necessary because all insurance companies will require exactly that. And maybe Mark could weigh in on that.
The building code requires it too.
That's my understanding, yeah.
So why even have it in our bylaws if they're required, by insurance companies?
Well,
Although it's not, it doesn't hurt, and I think it,
Yeah, it's just stating the facts.
I think the bigger issue here, let's start with the big issue, which is, do we want to allow this by right by the building inspector, or do we want to keep it with the ZBA?
well, this was voted and discussed, and including the ZBA wanted it to.
Yeah,
move
this
over.
is,
The building
that's right.
inspector wanted it to move over. I think everyone involved,
yeah,
maybe, wanted it.
Wanted
moved
to
over.
move where, Sue? To the building inspector by right?
So the building,
Yes.
yes. They're never denied.
I know,
We
yeah.
allow everyone to have a swimming pool, so why make it an onerous, or even a time-consuming process?
And it allows for a special permit by the ZBA with some odd topography or certain issues. I reviewed
Exactly.
tons of swimming pools in town when I was on the ZBA, and they comply with this generally. Always.
Just for another viewpoint, Sarah, I think it should stay with the ZBA. I think to have a butters input on these, I've been to many ZBA meetings where abutters do want to voice opinions on lighting and things like that. So that was my opinion on it.
Okay, I think, let me just, one other thing, this landscape fence perimeter to screen visibility. I'm guessing, Gary, that's your edit, that you deleted that
Right.
just because you used a font change rather than.
Because that's excessively onerous. They don't necessarily need to landscape it whatsoever. And why are we running around town telling people to landscape their fences? I mean,
So let's take the easy one first. Does anybody object if I strike F?
There was someone on Lincoln Street, the new condos there. There was a swimming pool, condos went up and the screening wasn't sufficient. So you're pitting now neighbors against neighbors, an existing swimming pool that was there and a new use. So I agree with Mary. This removes some.
So I think
neighbor-
the philosophy about whether or not I can put something on my property, regardless of how you can see it. Or I think that's the issue, right?
I think it's just
Why
throwing
would
it
we-
out there
Wait
instead
a
of
minute, let's
saying-
let Laura, okay, let Laura.
Thank you. I'm just trying to understand the intent behind striking this clause. I don't see the harm in listing it. Again, it's just sort of a straightforward requirement.
why the fence around a swimming pool can be many, many feet long. So they have to landscape all of their fence that can be seen from where? Visibility from who? Zoning bylaws are not here to make every single neighbor happy as a lark. They're here to be fair and protect people's individual property rights.
None of that is saying that, Gary. This doesn't talk about percent. It just simply says some landscape screening. I mean, it was there before, so I'm just asking the question. I'm not suggesting that you plant the entire perimeter of it. It just says.
That's what this
landscape fence.
infers to me technically, that anybody that could see it from the street or their neighbor's property would have to landscape all of that fencing.
And I think this goes to the argument of why it should stay with the ZBA.
I totally disagree.
Um,
And we already voted on this, as was stated earlier.
Okay. with
So then we
that-
just leave it in as it is.
So can I just clarify two things? One is I cannot find any votes on any of this. So you've discussed it, I'm sure, but I can't find any votes. I've searched the minutes. So I think we have not voted it and it was a different board. So I will take a motion to let's leave it at to accept this as in its entirety as it stands here, because that was what, this is what was presented in that December 2020. So we can modify it from that, but this with the landscape fence perimeter and the inspector of buildings as the granting authority. So I'll take a motion for that and then we'll vote it. And
I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
okay. Are there any new arguments for or against that we haven't heard? Okay, hearing none. So the motion is just to move ahead with the swimming pools as a allowed use, with the inspector of buildings able to grant a permit subject to the following A through F criteria. Chris, go ahead.
Yes.
Gary?
No.
Oh, okay, that was Mary. Okay, Gary?
Oh,
That's okay.
sorry.
That's fine. Gary is a no. Gary?
Yes.
Laura?
Yes.
Ron, is he still here? Can't see.
Yes.
Okay. Christina?
Yes.
Okay, and I'll vote yes. So
I just want to make a comment. I think if my memory is recalling me properly, that fence was the that was the carrot to let it go over to the building inspector to let that.
okay,
screen
let's keep moving along. So let's then try to discern what we did before. Okay, prohibited use in the residential districts. The following accessory uses are prohibited: kennels, commercial auto repair shop, storage of recreational boats, trailers in a required side yard or rear setback from the property line.
Here's another yard. I mean, what does that mean?
Within the
And it's the
setback.
yard definition. We've got it.
Mhm.
Is there any yard that's required? I mean, why are we defining a yard if you can do whatever you want? I'm just confused with the yard.
Well, it says I can't
Yard,
store.
yard is the setback. It's the same thing as the setback.
So this is saying that you cannot, there's a lot of places that this, that boats are stored in the side setback. I can tell you that for
Yeah, I
sure.
remember we had a long discussion about this, and Mark pointed out that this was a good way of being neutral about it.
Okay. Any changes there?
Well,
You guys-
I see the same problem here that I saw last time. If your side yard setback's 30 feet and you don't have a very big piece of property, I thought the norm was you can't park vehicles closer than 5 feet of the property line. Why are you saying to somebody who has a boat and can't really afford to bring it to somebody's storage yards for the winter that they can't park it in the remaining, let's
Because
see.
it might be a 50-foot boat with a, 30 feet up in the air on a cradle.
And they exist like that. Well, they exist like that in town now, right?
They do, but not in people's setbacks.
Oh, they're on the sides of people's buildings is my take on it, but others may.
Well, this is in a residential district, not in the downtown.
Okay. You guys have talked about this. If anybody has a specific amendment, that I'd like to hear it. Otherwise, we're going to move on. Okay. Permitted uses. Okay, so this is the, I think Chris, you and I have to just look and make sure that we've got this properly labeled. Oh God, did I not include it? Okay. Oh, shoot. Did I not include the use table?
You don't have the use table, but
I
I can send it to you. You can put it up.
No, I have it. I just, I thought I did. I thought I had it in the, oh my God.
Sarah, can I just make the comment back up at 4.1.2? We're still calling it select board, and I think we have to be consistent that it's Board of Selectmen.
Why can't it be the select board?
They would have to vote a name change.
I thought this was more gender sensitive, but I actually can tell you that Ann Harrison said to me she didn't want to be referred to as a plank of wood. So she kind of supported selectmen.
Although Becky has her hand up, she might have.
Becky has her hand up, yeah.
Mary is correct. It is, we are legally the Board of Selectmen until it is voted at town meeting to be otherwise. So we are,
Is that on the agenda?
it was, if we have time and it's, you know, we'd like to get it on the agenda, but it's definitely not going to be on the first.
I can
Night.
see this taking up half the damn night is what, what to call you.
Right?
I'm sure many people would have many suggestions of what to call us. But Mary is correct on that.
Oh my God, I can't find this thing.
Use table?
Yeah, I thought I had it.
I can put it, I have it, if you
Do you
want.
have
I
the
can
latest one?
I have what's, I believe so. Let me, how do I share my screen?
Oh, here we go. I got it. Here we go. I thought I put it in this, was it in the PDF?
Yeah,
No,
It wasn't? Oh, my
no,
no, it
goodness.
is.
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is?
Yes, it
Okay,
is.
oh,
okay.
it's in the PDF.
I suggest you cut and paste it into after 4.2, like it said.
Yeah, I think so. I have to reshare because okay, I think this is with yeah. I think this is the current one. Yeah, because I added this header. So I put this notes in the header on each page, even though it makes it longer. All right, Chris and Mary, I know you guys have worked on this a lot. So the yellows were your notes.
Yeah, so let's start off with the RD1 and RD2 as to what is allowed. And that is, if you try reading the existing language, it is a minefield. But I think, Mary, we've agreed now that the RD1 is essentially the part around Vine Street, Norwood Ave, and RD2 is the string of properties along Pleasant Street and Pine Street. So in the RD2, you can convert a single family house into a two-family house if you follow a whole bunch of requirements, which is what note 2 is.
So let me just see if that really works. Let's hold on. Let's go down to note 2. So note 2 says the conversion of a single family resident into a two dwelling unit and the construction of a two dwelling are permitted if authorized by the ZBA.
Then
et cetera.
it says, however, it can be done, if it doesn't involve any increase in the size, height, blah, 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 it shall not require a special permit. So if you meet those in A, B, C, D, and E, you don't need a special permit. If you can't meet those, you do.
And that's what's in the current bylaw.
That is what's in the current bylaw.
And so why did you highlight this yellow?
To show that it, in fact, does not require a special permit.
Oh, so we have to designate it as a special permit, but then not a special permit.
That's correct. Yeah, this is why the current zoning is such a mess.
Yeah. I think you've got note. So let's just go back up to the table. You've got note 2. I think that's fair. So this is what we're talking about right here.
So it's allowed by special permit by ZBA, or yes, if you follow note 2.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's
Okay.
Well, I was suggesting that you just say a yes in both of those and just simply have a note under RD2, which points you to where you need a special permit. You don't need to.
Well, let's say that's the reverse of it, which would make, I guess, some sense, but it's not what the current zoning says.
Yeah, I think to be consistent, I mean, anything that doesn't comply, a lot of things that don't comply would have you'd go for a special permit, but if they comply, if all of these comply, I think to be consistent, Gary's right. You start with a yes, and then the note says by special permit.
I think the way that you have it is fine because it's both. It's, you can have
But
the.
it's not,
yes
but it's
first.
not consistent. So it will be confusing to some.
Swimming
Well,
pools are both. That's a good example.
Right.
Swimming pools are allowed, except if you're doing something that's weird, then you need a special permit. So we, and that's mentioned in the bylaw, but not in the use table. So cover that in the
No,
footnote.
As proposed, it would be.
I agree with the way it's listed here
I
because
think so
the
too.
majority need a special permit because very few people are converting to a two-family that aren't going to expand at all. So I
Mark-
think it follows what our current bylaw states.
Mark, given your excessive experience with use tables, what is your recommendation?
What's the specific question?
This, right here, can you see, the conversion of a one family to a two family is required with a special permit unless a whole bunch of conditions that are rare are met, in which case it's by right.
Yeah,
I think this is fine. That basically says that.
I can't remember. Is 2 referring to a note?
It's a
Yeah,
note.
Yes.
Yeah. Conversion of one to two-family dwelling with no increase in floor area, ZBA, yes. Why is one of these yes and the other one's ZBA?
It's a ZBA unless all those conditions are met.
Okay,
If they're met, it's a yes.
is that the only
Only
place we do
conditions.
that?
Yes, yes.
I think it's fine the way you have it. I really do.
I think what must have happened is this came up at a town meeting and somebody made an amendment and it passed and nobody really understood what the hell they were saying. So,
They decided to memorialize it in perpetuity,
exactly.
right?
Okay.
If everybody understands what it means, then it works, but I'm not sure I do, but.
Can it just be ZBA and then you go to the language to interpret it? Is that
I think-
clearer?
The norm would be yes, because it actually is allowed. And there's a lot of bylaws in a lot of towns where there's some pretty meaty stuff in the footnotes. And we should use the footnotes and not clutter up our use table. And they're
Well,
compelled
but-
to go to that footnote.
I think the most common situation in Manchester in the RD2 is that it's going to require a special permit. Because it's very hard. I wonder if you even have a single.
No, I don't disagree with you on that. I just think the footnotes cover it legally, and that's what's
Yeah,
important.
I feel like we should leave it the way they have it.
So just a question, if it is the principal requirement that it's no gross floor area increase? Or is that just one of many?
It's one of many.
And is it
Can't
the
have
only
any
way you,
stairways
and the only
and-
way you can, even with the ZBA, can only allow it if there's no increase in gross floor area?
No, the ZBA can do anything. You can get a special permit, do anything. But
I guess
if you meet all these little silly requirements, you get to do it without a special permit.
Got ya. So I don't mind. I just think having both is a little confusing, but I think with no increase in gross floor area, is that even needed then if that's one of many criteria and it's not a yes if that's the case?
Oh, well, that's a good
You
point.
see-
Yeah,
Okay.
take that out.
Agree.
Agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same
the
on number
same.
4, right?
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know. I didn't
Well, I'll
write them.
look at
so
that
no.
again. I'll look at that again, but yeah, I
Okay.
think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Okay, so the next
Uh,
issue is under community facilities, the difference between 4 and 5.
What's the
We can't
difference?
see a difference.
What's the difference?
I don't know, but the problem is that the current does allow those municipal uses and not generally. So I don't know. It's a, we just have
It
to.
should all be,
decide.
it should all be municipal use, yes, all the way across, no?
That's what I
mean,
think. That's what I think also, but
I mean, if you want to put a field up at the LCD,
so why don't we say municipal use, including municipal parks, playgrounds,
yeah.
all those things.
Are you going to include yards and related facilities at the end of that?
Yards and.
At the
related
end of
facilities.
5?
Well, are you merging 4 and 5? I guess that's my question.
Yes,
What is 5?
That's like a salt yard, a DPW yard where they store sand.
Municipal uses, number 5 is just municipal use. I mean, we store it in a residential district now.
So it could also be a transfer station.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
But-
it's a more bothersome use for a residential neighbor, that's all.
I think those things would have so much scrutiny and I wouldn't worry about it.
yeah, I'm not gonna worry about it either.
Okay.
This is
Why would they
town-
not
this
be
is-
allowed? But then would we have to make this a yes? Let's see, we have yes here for municipal use and no here for the other things.
Well, that's why we have to change it all to yes.
Right.
So Mark, if it's a municipal use, do they really need permission?
Yes, if you don't create your own exemption for your own municipality, it's subject to all the rules and regulations.
Really don't know if we want salt yards everywhere. I mean, I think we should leave it as we had it.
It doesn't say salt yards.
I know, but
That's a municipal use, though.
It is a municipal use, sure. It's always a senior center.
But so is municipal use is undefined, or did we define it?
I think this was still a work in progress, this document. So I think that we were trying to clarify between the two.
Yeah.
We were trying to make this consistent with zoning, except for the fact that zoning is inconsistent.
Absolutely.
That's why it isn't
Like,
highlighted.
Chris,
Is
I
there a
think
Well,
this would need a,
I think the current bylaw says parks, playgrounds, and other municipal recreational uses, wells, water storage, processing, sewer, lift stations, related buildings and parking facilities. And then I said, what about municipal yards? And that's why it's new, and that's why it has no.
Okay. So if we are silent on municipal yards,
Yeah, but then later districts say, like general district says municipal and utility uses. That's all it says. The later provisions say limited commercial says municipal use. And these are
Yeah.
allowed as of right. So it's all over the place.
oh, God. But this is under, okay, that's a good point. Community facilities.
The thinking usually is that you don't want to live next to a salt pile, especially in a snowstorm.
And I think there's arguments have been made that the fire station may need to be moved. So I don't think everyone wants to live next to the fire station either, or a municipal safety department. So, I mean, this is something I think we should think of at this point.
We're not saying that a fire, I mean, we need to locate our municipal uses somewhere in town. By designating them as an allowed use in a district doesn't mean that the fire station will go in that district. It means that the town has some flexibility in its citing of its municipal, meeting its municipal needs.
So I think we can just say, instead of yeses, it's, the yeses is by right, correct? So there's no review.
But it's the town,
It's the town, it'll be ultimate review.
and it will have town meeting vote.
Right,
All of these will have town meeting vote, so you can't get more review than that.
yeah.
I agree with Sarah. We shouldn't force the town to have to get variances for critical town uses.
I think this needs a footnote to clarify how it could occur. I mean, it can be yeses, but it should be with a footnote.
And the footnote says must be voted by town meeting.
Why
Yeah,
not just
but
put
there's a-
TMV instead of Ys in all the columns, town meeting vote?
Personally, I feel like what you've suggested here is, with this modification is sufficient. Town meeting vote is, gonna happen on any of those things.
Well, I
I
think once
agree.
the site is located, town meeting is just an afterthought. I guess that's my concern.
Yeah, these things don't happen in a vacuum.
No.
I like it the way it is. Do we have to make a vote so we can move on, or what do we do here?
Yeah, okay, why don't you move to,
I move to approve the languages you've got written right in our screen here for
in number 4,
B4.
okay?
Can I make an amendment to that? Can,
Yeah,
if
let's
we
have,
say,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry, if we said excluding yards, would that clarify for everybody? Or am I complicating things? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to. So we just want to strike number 5 and put it all into 4. Is that the intent?
If we do that, then we won't allow yards anywhere in town.
Right, I guess I was trying to say salt yards. That seemed to be a particular concern that,
We could add a note and say salt yards by special permit. I don't know.
Because the planning board knows better than the town.
Uh,
So weird.
yeah, it is weird. I retract it.
No, I think neighborhoods may know better than the town.
Okay, Gary has made a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, great. Any new arguments? I think that we could go a long time on this.
So I just want to clarify, this language is in opposition to what Mr. Bobrowski proposed, correct?
I think it differs from what Mr. Bobrowski proposed.
Nice distinction.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, Ron,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes,
Laura? Just thinking. Oh, Laura?
No, I said yes. Sorry, I
Okay.
must have not been muted. yet.
Gary,
Absolutely.
Mary,
Yes,
Christina?
No.
And I'll vote yes. Okay, thank you. So I'm gonna take off the yellow on that. Okay. Municipal uses, we're gonna strike that one.
right.
Okay, any other, okay, we come down to medical office buildings for no more than 3 doctors. No, general retail, personal general service establishment and restaurants, no's in the LCD. Why are those highlighted?
Maybe they should be allowed.
Well, is this purpose of this table is to modify the LCD or to try to bring use the table to reflect the current zoning?
It's the latter. It was just to convert our current uses into a table format. So this is what our current,
Well, we've made a few changes that we've made some exceptions to that, so I'm not sure that is a blanket.
that was the intent.
Yep.
That was the question.
Yeah, that was the intent. That's right.
So I'm going to just say that my opinion is actually that we have a lot of work to talk about with the LCD in the future, and that we should leave these as they are right now and not try to open that can of worms. We're
Yeah.
already, but I can be convinced otherwise.
Well, then I have a question.
Wait a minute, Gary, Chris, you were going to say something?
I was just gonna say, I don't object to leaving it the way it is.
Okay, Gary?
I'd really like to dive into the use discussion, but I understand your point. But our general retail uses, aren't those a type of business? Are they that distinctive? Or a restaurant, isn't that a kind of business? I mean, I don't think people are totally against the restaurant up there, but we want to limit it. Of course, we've had that discussion.
Find a restaurant. I assume we've defined retail, personal general services establishment, we should make sure we've defined those.
General
There-
retail, do we define that?
I think one of the
Yeah.
reasons why we said no was because we didn't want to have competitive uses with the downtown.
Right. I think that, yeah, I think my feeling is that the LCD has a lot of discussion to come. Let's get through I've unyellowed them and left them as no. Does anybody have an objection to that? All right, hearing none, let's move on. Okay,
Sarah,
so,
can we look at number 7, indoor recreational club or facility?
yeah,
And this is on a few of them. It says yes. Are we footnoting that it still needs a site plan approval from the planning board, or do we just take that as a yes?
It's, there's a general thing. See the star with the LC? The star says all uses require, except a few require a special permit.
okay. One,
I don't,
right here.
I don't know if that's clear for me. I don't know if other people will see that. And just so you know that in the, Chris, down below, you don't have it as a star, you just have it as a bullet in the footnotes.
No, that's
Okay.
because I couldn't.
Make
Okay,
us
but
do
that's the- That's the
Why-
intent.
maybe. So
Why
would it be
does-
clear, would it be
Why doesn't
clear?
it get a footnote number? Shouldn't it just?
Well, we
have a
could give it a number. We could give, I just didn't want to renumber every goddamn thing by putting 1 for LC.
Why don't we put a star and just put for those that are like, put a star on the actual thing. We can do that.
I
Box.
much prefer a footnote number. It's more clear for people. Anyhow.
I'll renumber it, Chris.
Okay.
All right. Okay,
So there's a few of those.
yeah, okay, good point. Okay, and then this number 18, the beauty of the idea of 2 town meetings is actually that this vote will have happened, let's say at the end of April, and presumably this table will happen in June. So that's why that will be consistent then with the zoning.
Mhm.
Parking, same with parking, right? This parking, why is that highlighted, Chris?
It's not clear at the moment whether it's allowed in the LCD.
Well, I mean, we're only talking about a certain part of the LCD, true? Or is it we're doing both sides? You know,
It's a note, there should be a note on the which sides of the, right?
and I mean, there may be a split here and there may be another column needed for LCD 1, LCD 2 or something.
I think we can use a note to say east of Pine Street or whatever, west of Pine Street and east of School Street.
Okay.
Yeah, or maybe that's the 14 is. Is that the 14? Oh, I need to check that section number is wrong. The ground mounted solar is in 10, I think now. Is this a note 14? Yes, there's your Pine Street and School Street. So we have to fix that once that's passed. Okay. Okay, we're getting here. Accessory uses. So the question I have is why did we leave the narrative up above if we're going to include it in the use table?
Why do we have it in the?
Remember, we just hashed our way through that narrative in 4.3 above. And now in the accessory uses, we have these same exact things. Except a couple other ones
Yeah, and more.
and
So
more.
the court has ruled in the last year, actually, that whereas all principal uses in order to be available must be listed, and if they're not listed, they're not permitted, that accessory uses are to be treated differently because there's such a wide range of possible accessory uses. One could never imagine all possible accessory uses and put them in a table. So the rule of thumb is that whether you put them in the narrative or whether you put them in the table or you put them in both, it is not an exhaustive list of possible accessory uses.
Okay, so we have this, accessory use section, which needs a better formatting, that we just talked about some of these,
Yep.
but not all of them. How did you guys figure out which ones we should, maybe, can we just get rid of all that narrative above?
Yeah, you could say in the above that accessory uses are those allowed in the subsection E of the use table, and other accessory uses which fit the definition of accessory use, which is customary, incidental, and located on the same lot as the principal use.
Okay, so can you write that to me?
Sure.
And then maybe we use that, and then we get rid of all that narrative, make this table reflect the discussion of swimming pools, for example.
Yep.
Accessory dwelling units, we'll come back to that in a minute.
Sarah, could you clarify, for example, under swimming pools, are we suggesting changing that to yes with an asterisk, or?
Yeah, so we just did vote that, so I'm gonna come back to that one too. So we need to make this reflect what we just voted. Okay, so a couple things. First of all, do we have agreement that we should just use the use table and take that narrative above out? Start with that one. And substitute in the narrative that Mark's gonna give us that is more general.
That sounds cleaner.
Yeah, I'd like to review the narrative just to make sure we're capturing it all here, but yes.
It's
Okay.
clear.
Principle.
Okay. Then the second thing is, we did just change the swimming pool, so we need to reflect that. And then tennis courts, I think we can do that. Tennis courts, Chris, can you walk us through this one? Line 4.
Well, the question was, if you're allowing a swimming pool by right, shouldn't you just allow tennis courts, but if they meet the same criteria?
I would say if you don't have lighting,
I think they're going to need some additional criteria, to be fair. The lighting for them will be much higher up than it would be for a swimming pool.
Well, maybe
And-
we should just keep it in ZBA. Sarah Mellish didn't say anything about tennis courts, and maybe not enough people proposed them to make it worthwhile anyway.
There's quite a few in town, and their location on the lot is another issue. Maybe Laura wants to weigh in, but I think that there are some differences.
Yeah, I also agree if Sarah didn't bring it up, I think she probably is happy to keep that role. And
so I
think
can't
they
remember if
do
it was
some-
last month or the month before, but there was a tennis court or sports court. And she said during COVID, I think the number tripled for applications. So, and there was quite a neighborhood discussion around the sport court.
So the question we're trying to figure out is how we treat it for the zoning bylaw.
I think it needs to stay as is.
Okay. So we're gonna fix this one now.
Well, I think we should consider putting it in here, but we just would want to have a footnote with more criteria. So maybe we do that next year or something.
Yeah, I think for this year. Okay, I'm gonna also now, sorry, we just voted this, so I apologize for bringing it up again on the swimming pools. However, I think it's fair to say that with the exception of swimming pools, this table simply, and the exception of the LCD laboratory, which will presumably get voted before the table gets voted, that the table is simply an alternate way to describe the allowed uses. And with number 5 going to by right, swimming pools going to by right, we cannot say that. And my concern here is that we will get through, if we can call the article, if we can describe this section as, and maybe Mark, listen carefully and tell me if I'm crazy, but I have talked about this with Alan Wilson, our moderator, that if we can say that all we are doing is changing how we described the allowed uses, then the subject of the allowed uses is not germane on town meeting floor. So therefore I can't, we got to come back to accessory dwelling units number 6 as well. Whether or not I think that garaging or home occupations or any of these uses should be allowed in a district would not be subject to debate. I suppose we could write the article and simply include to change how we do it and change swimming pools. We could also do that. So am I correct on that, or do you disagree?
I think it would depend on how you write it, but I think once it's on the warrant that your use table is up for grabs, it's up for grabs. I mean, in a worst case scenario, you could have some person say, you know, move to delete family daycare large, move to delete family daycare small. And if it got enough votes, I suppose it would disappear. It's never happened to me in 100 times, but.
Okay. So you don't think it's a big concern?
I think, you know, there's a possibility that you'll be surprised by somebody trying to change 1 or 2 pet peeve things, but I don't think they're going to, you know, do a wholesale assault on the use table. I think that the crowd would pretty quickly grow weary of that.
Okay. All right, then we'll leave it. Given that discussion, any other comments on that?
Sarah, this is Sue. Aren't you doing the same thing with the LCD?
Well, the LCD would the zoning changes.
Oh, got you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for that clarification.
Okay.
I guess
Well,
I'm a little confused. Are you saying that what's going to town meeting is the use table and not the individual items that are being changed?
Oh, I'm saying that if we are changing things, then obviously they are subject to town meeting. But if we were only, if the use table reflected the zoning language now only, would the substitution of the table for the narrative be what's allowed? And
Okay.
Mark saying that I'm wrong on that. So in that case. Okay. All right. Any other comments on accessory uses? Oh, reflecting antennas. Didn't we delete that in the last go around?
We did.
We did. I think we can take that out. It's not in our bylaw anymore. We'll double check that, but we took that out. We got something done. Okay. Other matters, including construction or alteration of structures within the tidelands. Okay. That's right out of the bylaw, I presume, Chris and Mary. Is Chris still here?
I believe
Yes,
so.
that is.
Okay. All right, great. Okay. So any other comments?
Just to be consistent, Sue confirmed at the top of the table, instead of RD1 and RD2, it should just say D1 and D2 to be consistent with our new map.
Okay.
Is that correct, Sue?
Yes, it wasn't the D that was the problem. It was the R, because they're all residential districts. The map simply says A, B, C, D.
No, above that, Sarah, the RD1 should just say D1.
Well, in this use table, she calls it. She's got all SRA. That had changed since I had seen it originally.
Okay. Can you just double check this? Check.
Actually, they should all be consistent with the map.
Right.
Right.
I think the map should be made to be consistent with the current zoning
Well.
language.
Exactly.
Which it calls, yes, it just calls it A.
Well,
Well.
yeah, the abbreviation should be consistent.
Yeah. Okay, we'll double check that. Okay, it's, let me just save this for heaven's sakes, because what's today? What's today's date?
8th, 2/8.
Okay, okay, how, I'm gonna stop sharing for a minute. Okay. Everybody's tired. That took a long time, but I think we're getting close. Thank you, everybody, for your patience and good thinking on this. We had talked about, it's 9 o'clock. We had talked about doing stormwater tonight. There are a couple of, I'd like to, if we could just go through the stormwater stuff that Chuck wants. My thought was that we could get the stormwater changes that the DPW director wants at this town meeting, and then discuss the idea of moving stormwater or replicating it in the general bylaw as a future work. That, I don't know if we're ready to do that tonight, but what do people want to tackle that, or are two people too tired?
So what Chuck wants to do is just bring it into compliance with the state, right? State requirements.
Right.
I don't know why we should bother discussing it, frankly.
Yeah, and is that, I agree, is that Mark's language? I mean, we got the language that just
No, that
complies
was
with the state.
pre-existing. That was pre-existing.
Oh, that was pre-existing.
It was
Okay.
the new language to bring it into compliance for DPW, or to bring it up to the standards and to state requirements, was provided by their consultant.
So that's the language we're about to look at, was what was provided by their consultant.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And I think that Laura, I know, has some really good thoughts on stormwater, but I'm bringing this up. But I'm thinking that we don't have the cycles to do it for this town meeting, but I'm really interested in doing that, thinking about that with regard to resilience as well as the general bylaw, but for the next, try to get this up to,
I think, I mean, it improves what we have now, right? And it helps Chuck get us into compliance. So I support that at least in interim measure.
So the yellow is the new material. I did, can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we can, oh, sorry, I'm gonna make it bigger. If we can just get this to, so.
Does Mark look at this?
I'm not sure if he's seen it yet.
So
But
this
this-
language is straight from the stormwater handbook.
Right. And so the issue is that DPW director wants us to add these changes so that he is in compliance, or we are in compliance with some requirement he has to do this. So,
Okay.
are there any people have any comments on this? And I'm sorry, I didn't open the issues document on this one.
Yeah,
I
so
think
one,
just a
my-
separate set of eyes. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mary.
no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say a separate set of eyes, legal set of eyes would be, in my opinion, warranted. And if Mark says, okay, I'm good with it. That's,
I haven't looked at it, so if,
We'll send it to you.
and I'm trying to squint and read it with my magnifying glasses on.
Don't bother, I'll send it, Mark.
It ain't working.
We'll just send it to you. And I think if it's basically coming up in conformity with the stormwater handbook, we'll send it to Mark and everybody take a quick look at it. But I think it would be good to move this ahead to.
So is the rest of the bylaw staying the same?
lead
It's just-
section. It's replacing this section, 6.15.7.
Okay, because yeah, so this literally is a cut and paste from the stormwater
And
handbook,
it's subsection C.
except for, I had a question on standard 6. At the end of that, it says the critical areas also include swimming beaches and cold water fisheries. Well, there's 3 or 4 other things listed as critical areas in the handbook, and I'm just curious why we didn't include those.
And what are those?
I cut and pasted in your
In-
issues doc. I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
It's, yeah, I don't have it. in
Why
front
don't
of
we
me.
circle back with Chuck and see if there's any reason we wouldn't include those?
Yeah,
Okay, so that's line, and this is a PDF. Stormwater line.
89.
Okay. Mary. Okay, comment. Okay, we'll circle back on that. Good, careful reading there. Thank you.
Sarah, are you reluctant to make this into the general bylaws because you think it's gonna be controversial? Or,
It's a procedural thing. Maybe, so the question is, it's just cycles of amount of like brain power to get it done.
okay,
So if it's easy to put in the general bylaws, then fine. I guess I'd be curious to know whether, from Mark's perspective, whether we should put our stormwater in general bylaws. I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
definitely. I mean, I've worked in a few towns over the years and they've transferred it over, and it allows for the same kind of things we were talking about with signs. That is, it's not just a permitting standard, it becomes a performance standard. So even older houses that didn't go through it are subject to it.
is it, do we want to have it in both, or is it better just to put it in general?
Better to put it in general, because that way you have it in both.
Okay.
So like if I'm permitting a new house, I have to comply with the stormwater standards. If I've got a leaky old house, I've got to comply with the performance standards. So that's the beauty of it. Whereas under zoning, the leaky old house owner would say, it doesn't apply to me. My house is built before that.
Okay.
grandfathered.
So you were going to look at that as a, did you
Did I get a response from town council? No,
Yeah,
I did not.
or did you get any? Okay, well, let's have,
I
can
will
I-
bring it before them again.
okay, can I make a suggestion that we, if we're gonna have a town meeting on April 26th, that we just, that we do, because I'm trying to get everything in a package that we can put on the butt, that if it's April 26th, that we move it in zoning. And if we have till June, that we move it to general bylaws.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me just.
I
look at
think in
what
terms
the-
of just time, we
Yeah.
still don't know if we might be having a full town meeting on April 26th. I doubt that's the case, but
Has the date that you have on your website, which I think is April 4th, has that gone away?
oh, yes.
As of last night.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, you missed the beginning. They've pushed it out at least to the end of that last week in April,
Okay.
but no definitive date. So you're off the hook on the 4th.
Okay.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's move this forward as an amendment to zoning if we're going to be working in the April timeframe, and move it to the general bylaws if we're going to be in the June timeframe.
Can I
But
ask a clarifying question? That doesn't, by moving it to zoning, that doesn't preclude us from later moving
No.
it to general, right? By voting on that tonight. Okay,
It's already in zoning. It would just be a zoning update.
Yeah.
okay. Thanks, Sue.
Okay, there were 2 other small things that I wanted just to raise, just to try to get them off the list so we can put some things on the website. One was the on the accessory dwelling units. Sorry to come back to this, but can you see? I can't figure out which screen I'm sharing. Hold on.
Toxic.
Okay. Here we go. What?
It was toxic stuff.
Oh,
Okay, this is better.
Okay, the only question is that, there was a, Gary wanted to strike, that this, I think it is this clause that is subordinate to the primary dwelling unit. That there was a, Gary wanted to strike that, I believe.
That was my suggestion, so maybe I could ask Gary what is
Yeah,
the trouble with it.
It's unnecessary language. You start wondering, well, what's subordinate mean, ordinate, and we should try to be as straightforward and concise and clear as possible. And it's the definition. Was there any other wording here taken out from the original proposal?
I didn't take anything out. I don't think I added that from looking at other ADUs, other ADU regs and trying to achieve more clarity rather than
I
less.
looked at dozens of ADU legs, and the whole group of us.
but the question is,
Appearance, yeah.
the question is, do we want this language in or not?
And I'm
How we got to
I was just about to talk about some more about the language. I don't think you need to say subordinate. I don't think you need to, I think it's not a good idea to say refer to its appearance and position relative to the street. We don't care where somebody puts the ADU inside of a building. It's not for us to say. It could be out close to the front of the house or to the side of the house or the back of the house. So
Gary, I think this gets at, is it attached or detached? I mean, this is really talking about it as a detached. Of course, if it's inside the house, we don't care where it is. It has no effect on the envelope of the existing structure. If this is a detached accessory unit, then that's the intent of that language.
Yeah.
That's why I wasn't clear on 6B will be in. So if
I
we're
think
saying that we're not allowing detached, maybe we just need to be clearer about
This
that.
Yeah, we're not,
language,
Okay, let's take
We're
one at a time
allowed
here.
with special permit.
Gary, let's hear from others. I'll say, I think that this clause adds to the clarity and intent. But Chris, you wanted to say something?
so I think since we're not allowing detached units, I think saying it's subordinate to the primary dwelling is okay. But
Yeah.
the rest of it, I don't think is needed if we're not allowing detached.
So which is the rest? So it's subordinate to the primary dwelling and then just strike that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm okay with that too. How about others?
I'm
You
okay
know-
with that. This is Christine, and I've actually had a conversation with the building inspector, and this also applies to accessory. The same language is in accessory buildings or accessories. So it needs to be consistent in my opinion. So I'm okay with striking the end, but subordinate is important in my opinion.
Okay, the language wasn't intended to describe the use, but so are we not allowing detached then? Is that the intent to never allow a detached ADU?
No, I
or-
think that the issue is down here that it's allowed by right and unless
Unless
special
you put a
permit,
special permit from the zoning.
You
Right.
can
board
do
of
it with a
appeals.
special permit.
an existing detached accessory requires a special permit.
Yeah, I'm just gonna throw this in. What does subordinate to the primary dwelling mean? Does that mean the leftover space beyond the 900-foot ADU? If the leftover space is 800-foot, well, then it's not subordinate. I mean, why are we doing that kind of?
Gary,
odd-
I think this is fighting over grass clippings here.
Right.
Can we ask Mark for his opinion? assuming
Well,
he's
I
written some of these
was
pieces?
scrolling down there a little lower, so thank you for doing that. I saw a 900-foot size limitation. I mean, I think, subordinate to the primary dwelling unit, I think the governor's definition of this was no more than half the size of the principal dwelling unit or 900 feet, whichever is smaller.
And so Gary we've put in the 900 feet as
Yeah.
okay, my sense of the meeting here without taking a vote is that we are okay striking the part in purple, but leaving subordinate to the primary dwelling. Any objection? Okay, hearing none, I'm going to move that because I want to put this also up on the website because we voted everything else. Okay, the other thing that was small, Small issue, non-conforming use. We did not resolve, we did not discuss, and I know Gary feels that this 100% is fine. This is the non-conforming use. We passed over this discussion because Mark had said we could do any number we wanted. Then a non-conforming use does not change the non-conforming use of the structure, and such reconstruction extension does not increase the gross area of the structure by more than, and the proposal was 100%. But I think, Mark, you said that number could be anything.
Yeah, I
So-
wouldn't make it too low, like 25% I would find objectionable. But other
Okay.
than that, you know,
So are we comfortable with 100%, or do we want something else? We
So
just never,
100% allows you to put a second floor on the house.
right?
So that seems reasonable.
that was
I'm-
always my
I'm-
thing.
I'm personally not in agreement with this, so my comment is meaningless.
So that, what we're talking about right now is what the percentage here should be. So somebody want to
Yeah.
make a motion to that effect so we can close this out?
I move that we keep this language of 100%. Sorry, Chris.
Oh, go ahead. I'll second it.
Okay, discussion on the percentages. Any rationale one way or the other? Chris has said, you know, it could put a second floor on. It's provided it meets all the height and all the rest, but any other comments? Okay, let's vote on this. Chris,
Yes.
Gary,
Absolutely.
Ron,
Yes.
Christine,
No,
Mary.
I abstain, I guess.
Okay, Laura,
Yes.
and I'm gonna abstain. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Okay, great. Anybody else that didn't call on? Great. All right, those were two unresolved issues from last time that I wanted just to close out.
Did Ron vote?
Yeah. he was, yeah.
Yes, he did.
Yes, he did.
Okay. Thank you. It's 9 o'clock. We said if we were not having April 4th town meeting, we weren't gonna meet, and we got through stormwater and section 1 through 4. There are 3 other sections that we have contemplated. I don't think we're gonna take them up tonight, but I wanna know what your feeling is about them. Just whether we work through them in the same way. They are residential cluster, senior housing, and the section 6 general requirements, which have a lot of suggestions that are kind of administrative and procedural suggestions that Mr. Bobrowski had come up with. It's my opinion that if we have a April town meeting, it's going to be tough to get those vetted. But if we have a June town meeting, we should push to do them. And that it's doable. They're all in relatively decent shape, and we can probably in another 2 special meetings like this hash our way through them. Is that, are you in general agreement
No,
with that?
I agree with that. If that schedule is stretched out, I suggest we attack them, get these things
Get them
while
done.
we have Bobrowski with us.
Yeah,
Okay.
and the
You never know,
residential
I could
cluster
fall
also-
again.
No. By the way, Mark, are those dates acceptable? You know, when this town meeting shifts, I mean.
Yeah, no,
are
I'm
you gonna
around.
be-
I'm gonna go away on February 25th. I had a nasty accident and I'm gonna go to the Caribbean and rest. So, but I'll be back by March 27th.
What about June? What about June and,
No, I'm not going anywhere.
okay,
My nephew's getting married in France in the fall, so we're saving our money to do that too.
We've also mentioned a couple other things for June, which is move a few other things to the general bylaws, signs, stormwater, if we do June. So I think we still have a lot of work that we can get done. And if we do get all that body of work done, we'll really have made some significant progress. Chris, you were gonna say something, and
Well, just that the residential cluster is pretty non-controversial, I think. You already have it, and we're making minor changes to it, so I don't think it's gonna be. a big deal.
And the senior housing, I think, may have a lot of people who think it's a good idea. So I think I will put that as the agenda. I don't know when we're gonna next meet. I think we have a regular meeting on the 14th and then the 28th. I'm gonna suggest that we not meet that week, but between times, 'cause otherwise we'll meet every single week. And I'm hoping Chris will join me and anybody else who would like to present at the Board of Selectmen meeting on the 22nd. I'm hoping it'll be a 10-minute presentation. Chris came up with a very nice, I'm going to put it on SharePoint, summary of what we're doing in each section that I hope can be on the website with these PDFs beneath it as drafts. And I think we are at the point where we can probably put many of these up there for people to begin to look at. So I will let you know when we have, these are the documents that you're seeing now. So, and I think the narrative that Chris put together, which is why we're doing this, what the changes are. I have it here someplace. An explanation of what we're doing for each section. And I can just quickly
And
show you.
what the impact is, too.
Yeah, what the impact is. So for each section, what's being proposed, why are we making this proposal, and what will be the impact? So my thought is that below that would be a link to the PDF section. It might be 1 through 4 as a group, but
Is this
so-
in SharePoint that we would
not
be?
yet, not yet. We're still working on this, so I can see, you can see there's some typos here that I think are of my making tonight. So anyway, we will share this with you, and I think the only thing we really need to get up on the website immediately is this LCD, because that has to go up by Thursday. Sue, I'll send Tiffany something with you copying to you. But
Sarah,
know-
could you clarify what you said about meetings? You talked about us meeting in 1 week and then 2 weeks after. Are we going to eliminate one of those?
so the 14th is a regular planning board meeting. No, 14th, right?
Do we have to
Correct.
have it?
14, yes, we got a full agenda. We've got a curb cut, we've got an A&R, or we've got people coming in. We have Cornerstone continued hearing. We've got a lot of items on that.
I think we
Date.
would have recodification be like if we have a 10-minute discussion on any particular matters that need action, but other than that, we wouldn't go through these things. Then on the 22nd, we're presenting to the Board of Selectmen.
So I should take that off my calendar?
Yes, you should, I think. Yep. And then the 28th is the public hearing for the limited commercial district. I don't think we need Mark for that. Does anybody think otherwise? No. So I think, Mark, you're off the hook for until we let you know what the next meetings are going to be.
Okay, I took the 28th off.
And the
Uh,
22nd, we're already going to the Board of Selectmen. So
Okay,
I think, and I think that's a high level.
Sarah, isn't the 28th the hearing as well?
The 28th is the hearing for just the LCD,
Oh, that's right. Okay.
just the LCD.
all
And
right.
by then we'll know what the town meeting schedule is. So then we can figure out what we're going to be able to put forward. Okay.
All right, Sue knows where to reach me. Everybody stay safe.
Okay.
Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
You bet, yeah.
Tina,
Can
you
I
have your
ask a
hand
couple
up.
Questions?
Do can we use the calendar app? I know, Sarah, you're doing a lot of scheduling. Can you add them to our SharePoint calendar?
Yeah. Does everybody have has everybody seen that?
Yeah,
Or just put it in an email or something? Just, I
will.
thought the calendar would be the easiest way to see it, because it seems like it changes here to there. And then if you just change it, that would be amazing.
Yep, I will use the calendar app.
Awesome.
Unfortunately, it doesn't have a view that just prints out a list, so, which would be helpful. Mary?
Yeah, I have a few questions. I know I brought it up at least a dozen times. We've never discussed floodplain and the administrative changes for that. I would think that's a simple thing to do, and I'm not clear why we're not doing that.
Let's do it. Can you can you put it together?
Sarah, we have a floodplain one that's just ready to go when we're ready to do it.
All right, well, then let's
So
do
it
it.
was-
I just didn't know that. I mean,
It was presented, DPW offered it the same consultant that did their stormwater management bylaw. It's all ready to go. I've sent it to town council. I have not heard back from them.
okay, but if it's not as an article and if it's not on our list,
Right.
I didn't realize that anything was written. So
Right.
if we can get that, we can absolutely get it on our list. But I just,
Is this replacing something in the current zoning?
No,
It's
there's,
updating.
back in like 2020, there was new regulations that have never been updated. So I've never seen whatever draft Sue was talking about. So we, as a board, we should see that.
okay.
And then I just wanted to ask that if you're taking comments on the narrative before you present it to the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, I think I was thinking of 6 slides and direct that basically says, certainly this document that Chris started about what we're doing and what, why is sort of what I was thinking we would maybe give them as a handout. I don't know. I haven't even, it's a
Yeah,
whole
no, I
way-
mean,
a whole week away. I haven't even thought about it. 2 weeks away.
No, that's fine. I mean, I just personally think there's in some of these more fundamental changes, we have a lack of data to really say why we're doing this. So I hope either we're obtaining some of that or we're just saying that we're just doing this because, I mean, we don't have a lot of data with, take your pick, like, switching the non-conforming. Okay, well, how many applications went to the ZBA and weren't allowed to get permitted, and so there's just a lack of data. But then my other concern is the planning board website where all of these documents are going. There's stuff all over the place. It's very hard to find things if that can get cleaned up.
You mean the SharePoint site?
No, the planning board town website. So once you start posting planning board documents.
Yeah, and yeah,
or recodification. I mean.
I agree. We need to make it as clear as possible. I don't know how to do that exactly because we don't control the website entirely, but I think if you have screenshots, maybe you can take some screenshots and make suggestions about how you would think we should organize, what things should be removed. I do think that the 40R stuff personally should be mothballed off the website for now, especially as we're talking about zoning changes. It's confusing. So, so certainly anybody who has suggestions and wants to send them along to us, I think that's fine. Specificity is helpful.
So maybe at the next meeting, we could discuss the 40R, which is no longer calling it a 40R study, but we still have that open contract and need to complete that. And by the, before the end of the fiscal year. So.
Yeah, but I
Which is
think that's
June.
going to be useful as we start trying to work through a special permit for the laboratory.
And I have a full draft as soon as we're ready to address it. So.
Okay.
So, but it's really a study for the LCD. So at least the very least we should rename it.
Right.
I guess if you could send it to us sooner than later, we could review at our leisure.
Yeah.
Instead of.
Well, I think previously you had asked that the consultant walk us through it rather than give us a full document. So that's why I've been waiting for time on your breathing schedule for some time for some air to be in the room where it could be considered. So That's what we were kind of thinking the zoning would be done and we could move to that, but it doesn't seem like, now it seems like it's gonna keep up all the air until the June maybe, so.
As soon as you
We'll
have a final document, that send them forward. I mean, we all have busy schedules, and so if we can look at them at our own pace, I'd like to personally review it before someone presents it. So that's just my personal opinion.
Okay, well, Ron and I will talk about when to put it on the agenda.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, I don't think, we did have minutes on the agenda, but they're not in there was no file, there was no folder for tonight, so I don't think we can do that. We've got to get them in the folder for, next meeting.
They were all in the folder for the 14th.
Oh, okay.
No, I did not see them in there.
I put
I'll
them in
look
there today.
again.
They were
Okay,
emailed today. Yeah, that's just another pet. Like, I can't review minutes at 3 o'clock and for 6:30. That's just not feasible for me.
But
And
there are a
then,
number of them ready to go.
My comment, Sue or Sharon, the minutes that Gail Hunter took have yet to be posted on to the people. I'm wondering, does anyone have any insight on why that hasn't happened?
What dates are they, Ron? Are they,
I sent an email to both of you with the dates that are there from October through November, I think are missing. So I'm wondering if someone can follow up on why they're not posted, unless they've been posted in the last day or two. I haven't looked.
I haven't seen it.
Are they
I'll
approved?
check it out. If they were approved, they should be up. I don't. So who has the copy of them? Gail then? She would have the
I
final
would
draft.
think,
if they were-
I would think Gail has them. I don't think Helene does.
Okay, I'll follow
If
up.
they were approved, they should be in our packets for that date that they were approved.
But they may have gotten changes, so you see what I'm saying?
Okay.
So I
So
will check with Gail.
We should clean
I'll
that
check
up
with
because
Gail.
we're well behind. I think public needs to see what we're doing here. Okay, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Okay, Ms. Creighton,
Yes.
Ms. Delicio,
Yes.
Ms. Foley,
Yes.
Mr. Gilbert,
Absolutely.
Mr. Alney,
Yes.
and Ms. Tenney.
Yes.
Okay, see you on the 14th.
Okay.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Okay, then.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.